was very insightful.
Oh, thank you.
I'm trying to figure out who I should connect with on how best to structure our company's employee benefits. Any suggestions?
Well, I trust Old Mutual Corporate Consultants. They offer expert advice on optimal investment strategies, retirement fund management, employee benefits design, and much more. This means you'll get the best advice on your employees' future.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Corporate Consultants is a division of Fairburn Consult FSP 9328, a licensed FSP and member of the Old Mutual Group. T's and C's apply.
Attention all caregivers of children. Are you and your children's vaccinations up to date? Vaccinations can prevent serious diseases and prevent hospital stays. Protect your little ones by getting them vaccinated. Don't wait until it's too late. Talk to your healthcare provider today about getting your child vaccinated against serious childhood diseases. Because health matters. This message is brought to you by Sanofi and the National Department of Health.
For 18 years, Kumbulekaya has been fostering healing through forgiveness and reconciliation.
Are you asking me that? Yes. I grew up without a mom.
So what happened to your family?
What family? You are my family. What happened to you?
Witness as families forgive one another and reunite after a long time. Catch the new season of Kumbulekaya on SABC1 every Wednesday at 9 p.m.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
It is 8 minutes after 3 o'clock. Good evening and welcome to the Monday edition of the National Pulse. My name is Oliver Dickson, standing in for Ashraf Garda, who's away in Canada this week. Coming up on the show, quite a bit coming up for you this evening. We're going to be taking a look at illegal mining in a short while. And I want us to draw a distinction, very importantly, between illegal mining and zamazamas. They're not always the same thing, although there is an overlap and confluence of conditionalities there. A little bit later on, we're going to be speaking to Sophie Mukwena, SABC International News Editor, on the ongoing United Nations General Assembly that started today. Yesterday, the chamber of the United Nations General Assembly started the Summit on the Future. President Ramaphosa had delivered opening remarks at the Summit of the Future, outlining what he thinks ought to be the agenda of the Summit on the Future and the United Nations General Assembly. We'll take a look at some of those remarks and make sense of what he had said. A number of interesting comments he made there. And then a little bit later on, in the same hour, we're going to be taking a look at eye health, eyesight health. Very specifically, we're going to be observing World Retina Week that's happening this week. Dr. Nombuso Mate is going to be talking to us about the importance of regular eye exams. Now, my eyesight has been great all my life, and it has started deteriorating in the last 2 or so years. I'm not yet wearing spectacles. I should be wearing spectacles. I really should be. I have a lot of harsh light that gets into my eyes. I work on radio and television and in our TV studios. Of course, you can imagine all the amount of like really sharp, bright, harsh lights that my eye has to process. And reading off of a teleprompter, I'm on my phone and in front of my computer for many hours in the day. My eye health has certainly deteriorated. But I haven't yet done an eye test and gotten new spectacles as I should. I should probably get around to that. And then a little bit later on, we're going to be taking a look at 100 days of the newly formed coalition government. They call themselves the Government of National Unity. You may call them whatever you like. They're 100 days old now. We're taking a look at what has happened in the last 100 days and how it has shaped our politics of governance and what it tells us about the next couple of years of governance ahead of us. We're going to be speaking to Professor Dirk Kotzer, who's a political analyst from the University of South Africa. You can be a part of all of these conversations. Please do be with us. The number to dial is 086 000 2032, 086 000 2032. You can find us on WhatsApp. Send us your short WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. My name is Oliver Dickson. Find me on Facebook at Oliver Dickson. On Twitter, or X as you may call it, it is Oliver_speaking. It's 10 minutes after 3.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
10 minutes after 3 o'clock. Why is illegal mining refusing to go away in South Africa? But more importantly, what is the difference between zamazamas and illegal mining? Because there seems to be a distinction that's often conflated. we have this conversation in context of the Operation Valamkoti, which recently arrested several individuals that were allegedly involved in illegal mining activities in the Northwest. But is there a real incentive in political will to deal with illegal mining? David van Wyk, who's lead researcher at Benchmarks Foundation, joins us. David, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, and thank you for having me, Oliver.
Let's begin at the rudimentary part of this conversation, and that is on the definition of illegal mining. My understanding of illegal mining is that it can come across as really sophisticated enterprises that are mining with really sophisticated machinery, trading the commodities, the resources or minerals in the formal market, but may not necessarily have a license to operate that mine, may not necessarily have the necessary permits that gives them the right to access that land and to mine on it. And then on the other hand, there are zamazamas, which is very unsophisticated, very ad hoc, but syndicated nonetheless. Talk to us about the dynamics of illegal mining that we see in South Africa, very specifically in the Northwest.
Well, I think in the Northwest, you have now the emergence of chrome mining as an illegal activity. It's come across from Limpopo, from Sekhukhune land, where it started. And this is very sophisticated, like you've indicated. People use graders, they use trucks and so on. And the thing with chrome is it's quite close to the surface, so you just have to scrape off the topsoil. And then you get to the chrome. You don't have to go very deep to get there, but you can take out very large quantities if you've got the necessary graders and trucks and so on. Now, what makes that kind of mining very problematic is that in the Northwest Province, it seems as if a lot of these guys actually have licenses and permits to be there. And local communities are complaining that they applied for the same licenses but never got them, but people from outside are coming in and they do get the licenses and so on to do so. The other problem with this kind of mining is that very often there's no environmental impact assessment, there's no environmental management plan, and there's also no social and labor plan. So no one benefits except the guys who are scraping this stuff up and driving it off to washing plants, and from the washing plants getting it into the formal system. Now, the problem also with this kind of mining is that many of the big mining companies circumvent costs by actually employing these guys, because you don't have pensions to pay, you don't have medical aid to pay, you don't have unionized workers who are going to give you any trouble. It's becoming like the Congo, it's becoming like Katanga region in the Congo, where the big mining company simply moves into an area, it takes over all these smaller operators who then deliver to its washing plants, and it gets it into the harbors and into the export transport, the ships and so on that you find in the harbors and so on. That is chrome, and every mineral and metal has its own specifics around this particular issue. For example, coal mining you can do in a similar way. It's also quite close to the surface. You can also just scrape it up and you load it up onto trucks, and you're quite close to the harbour in Maputo or the harbours on the east coast of South Africa, and you can get it into the system. And our harbours are not very well controlled and managed, unfortunately.
Yeah. Interestingly, though, a lot of these companies, especially the type of mining operations you're describing right now, will tell you things like, I have applied for a mining license or a mining right and the necessary permits, but the DMRE is taking forever to approve these things. It can take up to 3 to 5 years, depending on how heavy the backlog is in the region that you're at, to get the necessary license. Yet they go ahead and mine nonetheless. Now, I'm not sure if there is a special dispensation for those sort of people to be able to mine without the necessary permits. And oftentimes, communities are disgruntled about these people, not knowing who they are, just seeing them and the yellow plant coming in and beginning to mine. What happens in such an instance?
Well, I think that the issue of understaffing in DMRE is a problem in the provinces, but also the issue of corruption in the provinces in the provincial offices of DMRE is also a problem. I used to work in the Northwest Province in the Premier's office, and there I know that the DMR office in Klerksdorp was suspended a couple of times on the basis of allegations of corruption and so on. It's a national function. It's not a provincial function. And that's the other problem. Because mining is a national function, there's very little control that provinces have over what's happening in their territory. And they have very little control over mining. And agriculture is a provincial function, and you have to protect agriculture, but mining just comes in, it just rips up the topsoil, pollutes the water, and makes life very difficult for local communities who depend on survival mining. On the other hand, there's another aspect which we haven't spoken about, and that aspect is the 6,000 abandoned mines that we do have in the country, which are illegally abandoned in this country. And that's where you've got the Zamazamas operating. Yeah. They basically occupy these old abandoned mines and they scrape a living out there. And that's another complex problem that needs discussion as well.
Yeah. And that's part of the problem around DMRE enforcing their regulations around abandoned mines or at least the end of lifespan of certain mines where they have to rehabilitate the land before they can disappear. And oftentimes our focus is on Zamazamas. Do we know comparatively how big each type of illegal mining market is, Zamazamas compared to mining without licenses?
Well, the guys who operate on these abandoned mines, there are about 34,000 of them just in Gauteng. Last time I checked, in any case, the government says it's much less, but it's not true. I think that there needs to be a proper audit of all the abandoned mine sites, and all those mine sites have informal settlements on them, because very often the retrenched workers from the former formal mine don't go home, they stay, and people come from the labour sending areas where they historically came from, and they come into those informal settlements as well. And so you have this growth of informal settlements. In fact, you can say from Springs all the way to Klerksdorp, Main Road is just about one big informal settlement all along the mining belt.
Absolutely.
And this is a major problem, because we're not making the transition. We're a transitional society in many ways. We're politically transitional, we're economically transitional. We are transitioning from large-scale industrial mining to medium and small-scale mining, and it has to happen in an orderly fashion. We are also transitioning from fossil fuels to alternative energy, and these old mines could have provided us the opportunity to actually have an orderly transition where we use the old mining sites with the electricity substations and so on to create capacity in communities to feed electricity back into the national grid. But we never did that. We allowed all the substations to be plundered and messed up. And all along Main Reef Road, all the old mining towns and so on start to look like they are in the middle of Ukraine or they are in Gaza or somewhere else. It looks like a war zone.
Yeah. And just lastly, there's a type of illegal mining which is sort of a backdoor licensing illegal mining. You may have received a license and the necessary permits, but you don't have the capital to mine. And so years lapse before anything gets done. I come in and I'm like, hey, David, I've got the machinery, I've got the licenses. I'm going to mine here and on the strength of your permit, but we don't necessarily own the operation together. That one is a little bit more difficult to investigate and to circumvent. Is the DMRE smart enough to be able to do the necessary forensics work to stop that type of illegal mining?
Well, I think that type of legal mining is called subcontracting, and many of the large-scale companies now do subcontracting. That's why you've got a lot of ghost workers in mines with licenses, because there are a lot of subcontractors, and the workers who work permanently for the mine often tell me they don't know who's a subcontractor and who's a ghost. And people go underground and they stay there for 3 months in a formal mine. But they get food every day, they get water every day, they get supplied every day. They get 50% less wages than everybody else does, and they are super exploited because they don't have any pensions, they don't have medical aid or anything like that. And when there's an accident, then the mining companies deny that they know about it, or they deny that they were brought there. But about 2 years ago, when Job Magoro was in Klerksdorp after some 19 mine workers were found on the surface dead, and I spoke to him in a radio program then, and he said to me that the Lesotho widows who came to identify their husbands said that their husbands were recruited by subcontractors.
Oh, my goodness. David van Wyk, we're going to have to leave you there. Thank you so much for your time, your insights, and your work. Really do appreciate it. David van Wyk is the lead researcher at the Benchmark Foundation. It's 20 minutes after 3 o'clock. On the other side of this, we speak to Sophie Mukwena.
Kickstart your journey to success in 2025 with the Durban University of Technology. DUT offers programs in the faculties of Accounting and Informatics, Applied Sciences, Arts and Design, Engineering and the Built Environment, Health Sciences and Management Sciences, open for applications for 2025. Applications close on 30th September 2024, but dates may vary. Visit dut.ac.za for a full list of available programs and entry requirements. Apply now through the Central Applications Office by visiting cao.ac.za.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course. We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll know your car's value in no time. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
Catch the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7 on SABC2. The top 6 contestants tackle a classic bake that's enjoyed all over the world, the humble pie. After learning the art of making pastry from scratch, they each prepare their own family-style pie filled with their favorite flavors. That's the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7, repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. Only on SABC2.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
President Ramaphosa landed in New York on Sunday, and he immediately on Saturday, my apologies, he immediately attended several business meetings with investors in New York. In fact, in the presidency, someone told me that he had 4 appointments on that particular day on Saturday. On Sunday, he then addressed the Summit of the Future. That's what it's called. It's a pre-summit to the United Nations General Assembly General Debate, which begins today. Now, the agenda for the general debate will focus on a number of things, including international peace. Ramaphosa had over the weekend on Sunday addressed international peace in his speech, speaking on various matters of international unrest, not disrest. My goodness, one of those, and I do want to quote from the speech that he delivered, because I think it gives us a sense of the tonality with which South Africa is approaching this summit this year around. There are debates on reform of the Security Council around bringing in a permanent member that has veto power, like the top 5, right? And there is conversations about giving African countries that level of representation as well. And of course, there will be the question, who should the African state be, or should it be a collective of the African nation states? And whether or not they really should have veto power. Veto power, countries like France, the United States of America, Great Britain, and China all have veto power in determining whether or not the Security Council should go ahead with any sort of action, peacekeeping, military interventions, whatever the case may be. And President Ramaphosa spoke to some of that in his speech this past Sunday when he addressed the Summit of the Future. He says, the Pact for the Future is an opportunity to change and reinvigorate the multilateral system so that it's fit for purpose to address the challenges that the world faces. It is an opportunity to make good on the promises to reform the global governance architecture, including international financial institutions and the United Nations Security Council. 70 years since its founding, the structure of the United Nations Security Council remains largely unchanged. It is clearly no longer fit and adequate to address our modern-day challenges. Those were the words of President Ramaphosa in addressing the United Nations, addressing in the United Nations chambers the Summit on the Future. I want to hear your thoughts on that, whether or not you think a country like South Africa should become a permanent member that has veto power, effectively making us one of the most powerful nations in the world. But will South Africa always be able to adequately represent the voice of the global south, and in particularly the voice of African nation states? Send me a WhatsApp voice note on 0614 104 107, 0614 104 107. We're just struggling to get a hold of Sophie Mukwena. As soon as we get connection to her, we'll bring you that conversation.
Amidst misinformation and disinformation, where can we find reliable news? Turn to radio, your trusted source for truthful updates. For over 3 decades, we've upheld integrity as a signatory to the BCCSA Broadcasting Code of Conduct. Count on us for news you can trust. Say no to fake news. Radio, keeping it real since day one. A message from the National Association of Broadcasters. Tune in, trust, and stay informed.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Sophie Mukana joining us on the United Nations General Assembly General Debate that's starting today. Sophie Mukana is the SABC News' international editor. Sophie, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate it. It is a jam-packed agenda that the debate will be focusing on. International peace and security will be paramount on that, as well as climate change. What can you tell us about the contributions that have come through thus far, but more importantly, the contribution that President Ramaphosa made yesterday at the Summit on the Future and is expected to make in the general debate?
I think it's just a minute. Okay. I think what is critical will be to monitor the tone of the Secretary General of the United Nations. Tomorrow, it's starting tomorrow, the debate, in terms of his analysis on what's happening globally. The second issue will be the speech by the U.S. President. This is his last address to the United Nations, as he will be leaving office in January next year after elections.
Yeah.
And therefore, it will be interesting to hear what is he going to say, particularly in relation to Ukraine, Middle East, and generally what the globe is grappling with currently in terms of also the economic growth and poverty and unemployment and perhaps challenges of other sectors such as health, as we saw during COVID-19.
Yeah.
But in terms of the president also, I think he will touch on those issues because South Africa has been involved in those issues, but the issue of Africa will be at the center in terms of what the president is going to say, in terms of it is Africa's time, and therefore these are the issues that we must grapple with, particularly the issue of the transformation of the Security Council and the multilateral organizations.
Yeah, of course, there are multiple meetings taking place on the sidelines of the General Assembly, and President Ramaphosa took to him a very specific lean delegation of ministers. And I want us to speak about what that tells us about what's the thinking of the state in approaching this, right? He took with him the Minister of International Relations, Ronald Lamula, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Park Stau, the Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, Dion George of the Democratic Alliance, Marupeni Ramakopa, who's the Minister of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation in the Presidency. And lastly, he took with him the Minister of Health, Aaron Motsoaledi. What insight does that give us to the approach that President Ramaphosa is giving this General Assembly debate?
Global politics with Minister Lamula on his side, and clearly international matters is Minister Lamula. The Minister of Trade and Industry Competition, clearly the issue of trade and investment is very critical for President Ramaphosa. In his last term, he wants to turn the situation around in terms of the economic challenges the country is facing. The other issue, Minister of Health, quite an important one. As you know that the President was appointed by the AU to assist in terms of ensuring that the continent is prepared for the issues related to perhaps if there were outbreaks, and therefore the issue of vaccines. And now we're talking Mpox. The Minister of Monitoring and Evaluation, all these important issues the President is focusing on during his trip. The Minister must ensure that the relevant ministries are implementing everything that they will touch on or agree on in terms of the discussions at the UN. And of course, we know that you also have the DGs that are there, and the intention, because they are implementing agents. Ministers formulate policies. Implementation lies with civil servants.
Yeah. The reform of financial institutions and financing of climate reform is part of the agenda. He mentioned that in his speech yesterday on Sunday before the Summit on the Future. But interestingly, the Minister of Finance, who would likely be the recipient of any institutional financing, ring-fencing it and operationalizing it, is not there.
Yes, you don't need the Minister of Finance there. The role the Minister of Finance will play, the critical role, will be at the G20. And therefore, these matters will be taken to the G20. they can talk at political level, at policy level, with the Minister of Environmental Affairs being there. And the SG, he spoke about climate change. Everybody touched on climate change. And therefore, then they can come back, Minister Maruping, to say, going forward to G20, the implementing department is this one, and monitor that implementing department. So the issue of financing, it's not the end of it here at a political policy level. It will go at administrative, and real minister will be calling the shots at the G20. He will lead the delegation just before the president arrives in Brazil. So nothing is lost. You still have the Minister of Finance having his engagement on other multilateral conferences and fora.
And Davos preparation has already kicked off. Sophie Mugana, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. Let's take your latest headlines with Mudupi Makhalimeli.
Very much, Mr. Dickson, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines this hour, some political parties in Parliament say the proposed plan to terminate the rental agreement of the Student Financial Aid Scheme NSFA's headquarters in Cape Town will help cut costs for the beleaguered entity. The Nelson Mandela Foundation has announced that former International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor is the new chairperson, and a murder trial begins in Italy today in a case which prompted street protests across the country and the introduction of new laws to protect women. Details of these and other stories at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M24 in Centurion is closed between the Swartskorp entrance and Alaric due to road collapse incident. And the N1 southbound in Pretoria has roadworks reported with lane closures at the R21 highway interchange, so expect delays. In KZN, the N3 westbound has a stationary vehicle reported before the Pavilion Shopping Centre exit that's causing delays. The N11 has roadworks with traffic restrictions north of Ladysmith, and on the N3 there's roadworks with traffic restrictions near the Escort Ultra City services. In Cape Town, the N1 inbound has a stationary vehicle on the elevated freeway. Kloofneck Road outbound in Tamboerskloof is slow moving towards Signal Hill, the Table Mountain exits, and Victoria Road is slow moving in the Clifton, Bantry Bay area. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Khapele.
Dumi is here with the latest in sports. Did you stay up on Saturday night for that horrendous match?
You don't have a choice. As a South African, you don't have a choice.
I was deeply hurt.
I know.
That's the worst rugby I've seen the Springboks play in a very long time.
Sure.
But lessons learned, right?
Yeah.
I do want to say, and I think it's important, I think we often don't speak about, and there's a longer conversation to be had, the mental health of athletes and what we do as spectators and fans that contribute to the deterioration of that.
Absolutely.
I really feel for Mani Lebok. I think missing a crucial kick that could win the game and win the series, because that kick would have won the series, is something that's going to live with him for a long time.
It's already punishment for him.
If we torment him longer, he's not going to last very long. I think we need to safeguard his talent. He'll come right. Maybe he needs to see a sports psychologist. But man, let's be kind to Mani Lebok for missing that kick. The Springboks are still a good team.
I think people tend to forget that we are human beings after all.
Absolutely. Yeah, what do you have for us?
Well, we do start off with rugby. Argentina forward Marcos Grommer has been ruled out of Saturday's title deciding a rugby championship clash against South Africa with a knee injury. Grommer sustained a knee injury during the historic win over the Springboks on Saturday and now has been left out of the 28-man squad that will face the Springboks in Nelspruit. They just need a 5-point lead over Argentina in the standings going into the final round of this year's Southern Hemisphere Championship, and they also just need a point from that last encounter to become champions and add another cup to their brimming trophy cabinet. Then moving on to athletics, with just over a week before the registration deadline, the organizers of the Soweto Marathon say they are not concerned about the slow pace of entry sales. The deadline to secure race entries is at midnight on the 30th of September. So far, 10,000 entries have been sold, leaving around half of the targeted 20,000 still available. And race director Danny Bloomberg says that he anticipates a surge in last-minute registrations this week and is quite confident that they will reach the target.
Yeah, look, so the general trend, we're looking at all events, and I don't know if it's a South African trait that we have, we're all lastminute.com. So we're seeing, even now you can see, because we're closing towards the end of September, that a lot of people are entering. So to answer your question, yes, the entries are coming in. And we'll probably net off somewhere where we netted off towards the, last year, around about 22,000, somewhere around there. We're expecting, as I say, the daily entries are coming in quite quickly. So, yeah.
The race will take place on the 3rd of November in Nasrec. Moving over to football, Marumo Gallant's coach Dan Malisela says that he's targeting maximum points against defending champions Mamelodi Sundowns tomorrow evening. Malisela cut a frustrated figure following back-to-back defeats in the Betway Premiership, making his side one of only 2 teams that are yet to pick up points after 2 rounds of matches so far. Gallants now face Sundowns at Loftus on Heritage Day, and the coach insists that they can't be faced by the caliber of the opponents.
We don't have time, we don't have time. We just have to look at personnel, which is the right personnel to play against these guys. It's a very tough match as well.
Does it make it even harder given you've lost back-to-back games now?
Yeah, probably give them confidence. It will give them confidence, probably, but yeah, we need to start winning somewhere, and it doesn't matter against who, eh? It really doesn't matter.
Elsewhere, Manchester City striker Erling Haaland will reportedly face no further action after throwing a ball at the head of Arsenal defender Gabriel. And at the last minute, Haaland threw the ball at the back of Gabriel's head, but the FA cannot get involved because the incident was reviewed by the VAR, John Brooks, at the time. Now, Brooks decided it was not an act of violent conduct and so not worthy of a red card, and the VAR cannot intervene to recommend a booking. In cricket, Proteas coach Rob Walter says that the team are still on the right path. This is despite their ODI series loss to Afghanistan. SA restored their pride by winning the 3rd ODI yesterday, but it was after they were outplayed in the first 2 matches. And according to Walter, he feels that it will only get better if they are exposed to tough conditions, and then hopefully this is a catalyst for them to get better and the depth a little bit stronger. On that note, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour.
It is 38 minutes after 3 o'clock. On the other side of this, we speak to the MEC of Transport in KwaZulu-Natal, and we'll get an update on some of the ongoing recovery efforts taking place following this weekend's snow that left countless of people stranded in KwaZulu-Natal. Mboniso Duma will be joining us next.
Weeknights on S3 are anything but ordinary. BBC Primetime brings you the best of British television from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. You love drama? Then step into the world of Luther as he cracks down on criminals terrorizing the streets of London Monday to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Top Gear will have you falling in love and rolling in laughter as Jeremy Clarkson and his team take you on an automotive journey like no other, Monday to Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Channel your best entertainment with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up. S3.
Think bigger than just a banking partner. Think a team of specialized experts supporting you to make better financial decisions to enable your growth aspirations. Think a strategic partnership providing indispensable advice to help you make the right moves. Think bigger. Think Nedbank Commercial Banking. For more information, visit nedbank.co.za. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider.
There will be humongous fighting spirit accompanied by high emotions, tension, and drama. Because this is a meeting of giants. Golden Black targets maximum points as part of the Heritage Month celebrations. But Double Yellow says the Yellow Nation only gets impressed by victory. This is the Betway Premiership. Witness the massive clash between Kaizer Chiefs and Mamelodi Sundowns on Saturday, 28 September at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Who says talking never solves anything? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
You tune into the National Pulse. My name is Oliver Dickson. Let's have a listen at some of your reactions that's come through on the show thus far.
Is to represent Global South, but not necessary to say even when they are wrong, we stand with them. The same way that America stand with Israel when they are wrong, we don't like it. Our aim must be to represent fairness and justice. We should say to do away with veto power in the United Nations so that it will be a simple majority, or we agree on a certain number of majority. Then the world will be a better place. We can't just say because we are in South Africa and we've got veto power, then we think we're there. No, we need justice. We reform the entire institution. Look what happened in Zimbabwe. We try to protect, and we were saying they're a sovereign country. But we want America to intervene even when Israel is a sovereign country. So let's cry for fairness and justice. Do away with this. Or else let's form a different body like BRICS has formed its own structures so that nobody will have veto power. I think that will be fair. Gore.
I hear you on that, Colin. I think there's some logic to the idea of forming varied multilateral bodies, right? BRICS is one example. But we must recognize there's only one global, all-encompassing multilateral body, and that is the United Nations. And when it comes to security, peace, and matters of that nature, it is the United Nations Security Council that becomes that multilateral body. Whether you opt out of it doesn't make it any less of a global multilateral body. It remains that. And I think the decisions that are being made in the United Nations Security Council will impact you, whether you want to be a part of it or not. And it just is that unfortunate. And so I think that there is merit to fighting for the idea of a more inclusive Security Council where multilateralism is all-encompassing of all sectors of the world, not just the global north in particular. Thank you very much for that. I'll continue to take your reactions on 0614-104-107. But we now speak to the MEC of Transport in KwaZulu-Natal, and that is MEC Sboniso Duma, following the heavy snowfall that has led, unfortunately, to what has been counted now by authorities, 3 deaths so far, 2 people having died yesterday from hypothermia, and 1 person having died on Saturday, also related to the snow. MEC, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate it. What is the latest update that you can give us on rescue efforts, rescue and recovery efforts, especially on roads that are ancillary and artillery to the N3 in KwaZulu-Natal?
Let me greet your good self and your listeners at home. Indeed, it's one of those afternoon. We are just on site currently around Van Renen, just to do what we call sweeping in terms of the security cluster. We are here just to thank those who participated. All the roads are open. We cleared almost every area as duty. We dispatched almost all our team. We want to thank the team from RTI, RTMC, the ambulance services in the province that assisted those who were stuck, and the duty team, the operators in particular, because the issue of those who were assisting, it might not be recognized currently, but they sacrificed themselves. They understood that the motorists were excited about their roads.
Yeah, and Mr. I do just want to put you back to my producer. Your line isn't very clear, so it cut out intermittently there, so we couldn't hear everything you said, but I think the crux of what you just said is important. There's a few more questions I want us to explore, specifically that around the involvement of disaster management authorities and their preparedness for the snowfall, given that the weather services had long given out signals saying that this was going to happen. Perhaps not at the scale that we perhaps we couldn't imagine it at the scale that which it happened, but nonetheless there should have been some preparedness. How prepared, MEC, were the disaster management authorities, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal, in the lead up to this, following the warnings that we had gotten from the South African Weather Service?
I think I must say that this was just a benchmark exercise, because you must understand that is in the mid of spring where we've started this process. There's never snow in the province of KwaZulu-Natal like this. In terms of adaptation, global warming is real, the issue of early warning, the detection, I think it was done. But in the future, we must procure more versatile machinery that are going to assist. Yes, we've dispatched graders. We need probably even the chains going forward, although there is scarcity of resources. But yes, we have learned, and we're thankful even to the local business, the farmers. The collaborative effort was something that taught us that this government, a caring government, working together with our communities, we could achieve more, we could do more as the communities assisting the government at the same time.
Yeah. There are people that have been stranded not just on the road, but whose homes have been affected, especially those living in informal settlements. What assistance from a human settlements perspective is being offered to those people?
We also dispatch almost all our teams in these municipalities that are affected just to go and check almost all those families. In some, already we've assisted certain families. In some instances, we still are going to profile them. That is the procedure. In terms of Operation Sumapat, you will find that we are going to give you the statistics from on Wednesday as to how many households were affected, how are we going to assist them, because that's how we usually do. But so far, we're glad that we have not lost lives in terms even on these informal settlements.
Yeah, and lastly, this must have been an incredibly expensive exercise to undertake, given the extent of it. And I mean, yeah, there was a resource share between yourself and the private sector farmers coming in to help. Similarly, a resource share between KwaZulu-Natal and the Free State, and COCTA at a national level stepping in as well, with Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa offering resources from that perspective as well. When it comes to the N3 toll concession, Sanral had gotten involved there, given that they are the main authority of that infrastructure. From a cost perspective, what does this cost the recovery effort, the rescue and recovery effort? What has it cost the Department of Cooperative of Transport, Human Settlements and Cooperative Governance in KwaZulu-Natal?
Technically, we don't even want to pre-issue a opinion at this point in time, because you might find that we must be declared as a disaster-prone province. So at this point in time, I can't give you the exact quantum value, because the team are still busy with that process assessment. At the right time, we are then going to issue a proper statement as to how much in terms of value. Yes, others contributed, but the reality is that you might find that in terms of grant funding, something ought to be done, because we're taking from what has been appropriated already in the province. Probably need to reprioritize the budget. Probably National Treasury must allocate more. So at the right time, we are just going to update you.
Yeah. MEC, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. MEC Siboniso Duma, the MEC of Transport and Human Settlements in KwaZulu-Natal. I'm taking your reactions to this. Perhaps you were stuck in the snow over the weekend. I'd love to hear what your experience was. I had a friend who was traveling to Harrismith, was stuck in the snow for 13 hours, she had told me. They had no food, they had no water, because they didn't expect that this was going to happen. And they were stranded there for 13 hours, and it was quite a strenuous ordeal. Send us a WhatsApp voice note if you were one of those motorists who were stuck in the snow anywhere across Mpumalanga, KwaZulu-Natal and the Free State. 086 000 2032. Give us a call there. 0614 104 107 is the number you can send us a WhatsApp voice note on. Let's speak to Billy in Skukune. Billy, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Oliver.
Go ahead. What's on your mind this afternoon?
Relations are defined by the conduct of each member. Here in South Africa, we've got Americans occupying spaces all over, including the rural areas, here where I live. Africans don't occupy an inch or even a single square meter in America. So the president keeps on going to the United Nations, and it's treated like a piece of, I don't understand. When they come here, they're treated like kings. So we keep on blessing people who don't care about us. When they come here, they mine our minerals, they take them away. We go there, we come back empty-handed. It's been for over 6 years now. OR went to the United Nations in 1963 to plead for their help. Nothing happened. It was even China which intervened. So we keep on going to these people who don't even give us a single cent, a penny. But we keep on kneeling. I don't know why. When they come here, they control themselves. They take everything that belongs to us. I stay in a rural area.
Yeah.
Americans are occupying a large space of land for free.
Okay. Billy, thank you so much for sharing your story. Really appreciate it, sharing your perspective with us there. 086 000 2032 if you'd like to react to any of the conversations. 10 minutes before 4.
The world's best cooking show is finally here. MasterChef South Africa Season 5. You'll meet 20 talented home cooks from around Mzansi, noma uphumapi, and no matter your favorite dish. See if the chefs can handle the heat in the kitchen in a race to be crowned MasterChef South Africa. Every Saturday, 7:30 p.m. only on S3, Channel 193. MasterChef South Africa, the world's best cooking show, proudly sponsored by Pick n Pay.
Durban's vast and warm ocean is our gold mine. Join us as we dive into the blue economy extravaganza, unlocking new opportunities and fostering sustainable growth during Blue Economy Week from the 24th to the 28th of September 2024 along the beachfront. Experience a display of exciting maritime activities from a variety of aquatic sports, groundbreaking maritime discussions and career opportunities, innovation programs, spectacular fashion, and much more. Don't miss this incredible event. Durban's Blue Economy, shaping our future. Visit Durban and explore the endless wave of tranquility. For more information, log on to www.durban.gov.za or any @eThekwini platforms.
Channel Heritage Day your way on Afternoon Express on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. only on S3. As Chef Ruben Riffel braais lekker curried lamb skewers, we rock our traditional regalia, and Jules Harding of Good Luck celebrates her daughter Skylar's first Heritage Day, and it's orange malva pudding for dessert. That's Afternoon Express this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
This week we celebrate and observe World Retina Week. Very importantly, we recognize and observe eye diseases that can be detected and prevented at an early stage, preventing permanent vision impairment, but also very importantly, subverting the need for very costly and invasive eye treatment. Dr. Nombusa Mate is an ophthalmologist and deputy head of the clinical unit at the McCord Hospital in Durban in KwaZulu-Natal, joins us. Dr. Mate, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Welcome to the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Oliver, and good afternoon to your listeners.
How pervasive are eye diseases, generally speaking?
So, maybe I do have a little bit of a bias, but sight is probably the most profound and important senses. So most people would really struggle with just even menial tasks with sight impairment. And of course, if you can imagine complete sight loss, most of us would not be able to manage. So it's important to be able to really understand that there are varying degrees of eye conditions, and I think the most important really are the ones we want to raise awareness around are those that cause impairment, sight impairment, and vision loss, whether reversible or irreversible.
Yeah. And what are some of the health-seeking behavioral elements that we're not taking into consideration when it comes to early detection?
So I think probably one of the most important things is that just our eye care health is not very well integrated in terms of the broad public health initiatives that we have around other conditions. And so it makes it difficult for people to understand the importance of having early detection. And of course, understanding that early detection helps us to be able to institute early treatment for conditions, and that way helping to prevent sight loss and vision loss. And of course, there's a number of other concerns around just eye health and policies. Our policies also don't help to adequately prioritize eye care, and that's speaking in terms of health budgets. And so again, we find ourselves on the back foot in terms of really trying to make an impact.
Right. Dr. Mate, when I was in primary school, I received a biannual eye test twice a year, every half of the year, along with various other health checks. And that was done for a number of years up until I actually finished primary school. And that was the time of my life where I received frequentitis. Now, not so much anymore. Those are part of the interventions to determine a visual impairment in children very early on. Are those some of the policies that you're speaking about, or is it a lot more broader than that?
Definitely a lot more broader. Those would be more screening initiatives. And if it's not embedded in a proper policy that will inform the level of care and health that is delivered to communities, especially communities that are indigent and where access, and that's a big reason as well, access to eye care. We're still battling with that in terms of the average South African who resides in a more rural community. We still have to travel in quite far to be able to access eye care. So what you're speaking to is more around screening initiatives, more than sort of a change that is at a central level in our government, where there's sufficient budget that understands that there are significant unmet needs, understanding that resources in terms of human resources as well are adequately supported to be able to serve the broader communities. And also, we're getting older and people are living longer. And so a lot of the eye conditions do present at older age. So yes, whilst there have been massive strides to improve healthcare access and campaigning around just general health, these conditions are going to come up more frequently.
Yeah. Have we integrated eyesight healthcare sufficiently into primary healthcare provision in South Africa, or is it still largely inaccessible, perhaps also largely expensive?
I think that is also part of the challenge that we have as a country, is that, yes, there is some degree of integration, but, in South Africa, we also have a category of community health workers who play a critical role in our healthcare, especially in the more peripheral areas. And so being able to further integrate some level of awareness and case detection at that level would also be help change what it looks like, what eye care looks like in our country. But certainly that could still be strengthened even at primary care, and really integrating within different disciplines. So we understand that, for example, patients who are diabetic can develop diabetic retinopathy, having an integration with general medicine so that there is early screening at that level, and it's not waiting for an eye care professional to deliver that. So it's that sort of level of integration that we really do wish for in this country.
Yeah. What are some of the most common eye diseases, and how many of them are reversible once they cause some visual impairment?
So the leading cause globally of sight impairment is what we call refractive errors, and these are conditions related to the need for spectacles. And you would think that something as simple as spectacles should be easily accessible, and still there's a significant unmet need across the country, across the provinces, in terms of being able to supply. So that's something that you would think is really simple. Those are causes of reversible. So when someone has sight impairment, you give them a pair of glasses and they're able to see. Then you have conditions such as cataract, which also causes reversible long enough. And of course, that sort of patient would need to be assessed and have surgery to reverse their blindness. And then we've got conditions that are a little bit more sinister that can cause irreversible sight loss. And there we're speaking about diabetic retinopathy, conditions such as neovascular age-related macular degeneration, as well as glaucoma. Glaucoma being one of the leading causes of irreversible blindness. And so a lot of work needs to go into understanding these different conditions. And
Ooh, we just had lost you there a little bit, Dr. Mate. The line had cut there. Seems like we had lost connection with Dr. Mate. If Dr. Mate had mentioned any of those, perhaps eye diseases and impairments that you're living with, give us a call and share your experience with us, 086 000 2032. You can also send us your WhatsApp voice note on 0614 104 107. What I'd love to hear from you is whether or not you were one of the motorists that was stranded, stuck in the snow somewhere along the multiple routes in South Africa, particularly the N3 and Van Riene's Pass, where we had seen the most snowfall causing traffic movements to stop entirely. Share your experience with us. How long were you stuck in the snow for? How did you survive it at all? Was your car able to keep you warm? Were you staying warm enough so that you don't fall sick, or perhaps, like we've sadly seen, loss of life, 3 people having lost their lives as a result of this? Give me a call, 086 000 2032. It is 4 p.m. Let's take your latest news.
The top stories is our reaction to the termination of NSFAS rental agreement and Naledi Pandor to lead the Nelson Mandela Foundation. A very good afternoon. Some parties in Parliament say the proposed plan to terminate the rental agreement of the Student Financial Aid Scheme NSFAS's headquarters in Cape Town will help cut costs for the beleaguered entity. This after the Higher Education Minister announced that the monthly multi-million rand NSFAS rental lease will be terminated. The relocation of the NSFAS headquarters to Cape Town city centre with a view of the Atlantic Ocean has always been criticised by some political parties. They say that the rental of 2.5 million rand per month was unjustifiable, while some students faced evictions or go hungry due to the non-payment of their allowances. The chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education, Tebogo Letsie.
It doesn't make sense when one NSFAS complains that the administrative budget is too low. Two, we believe that they should use that money that they will save from there. They should use the money to capacitate themselves even more.
The DA, meanwhile, says that no government entity should be enjoying a monthly rental with such a price tag. DA MP Karabo Kakao.
We had been making the same call, but there was little to no budge on the call for NSFAS to move that office. But now there's a greater appetite to listen to the voice of reason that the Democratic Alliance is and the solutions that they bring to the table are on the order of business. So certainly the GNU is on the right track.
The Nelson Mandela Foundation has announced that former International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor is the new chairperson. Dr. Pandor becomes the third person to hold the position since the late former President Nelson Mandela established the organization in 1999. Ditaba Tsotetsi reports.
The appointment of Dr. Naledi Pandor follows the retirement of board chairperson Professor Njabulo Ndebele, who has served on the board for a quarter of a century and served as chair for over a decade. The Board of Trustees of the Nelson Mandela Foundation says that Dr. Pandor offers the foundation just what it needs for the next phase of its development. Dr. Pandor worked closely with Madiba during South Africa's first democratic administration in the 1990s and was one of South Africa's longest-serving members of Parliament. She has served in numerous leadership roles, the most recent being that of International Relations Minister. Ditaba Tsotetsi, SABC News.
The Pan-South African Language Board is today celebrating International Day of Sign Languages. This year's celebration is under the theme Sign Up for Sign Language Rights. PanSalb's Chief Executive Lance Schulze says the celebration is intended to advocate for the linguistic rights of the deaf and people with disabilities. He's encouraged members of the public to learn sign language.
The theme for this year, which is Sign Up for Sign Language Rights. And what it really does is it recognizes the 12th official language being South African Sign Language. Secondly, it lays the foundation for our South African Sign Language Charter in terms of the blueprint as to how are we going to roll out the implementation of this program within our public as well as the private sectors. It really does bring together the tapestry of our deaf culture, and it gives the acknowledgement also of the integral role which they play within our society.
And a murder trial begins in Italy today in a case which prompted street protests across the country and the introduction of new laws to protect women. Filippo Turrera has already pleaded guilty to murdering his former girlfriend when she rejected his gift of a stuffed animal, telling him that she wanted to break off their relationship. More from the BBC's Paul Moss.
Giulia Cecchettin was just one of the 120 women killed in Italy last year, most by their former or current partners. She was 22 years old and about to graduate when she told her boyfriend she wanted to end their relationship. Filippo Turrera then stabbed her more than 70 times. He was caught and pleaded guilty, and his trial is not expected to last long. But Giulia Cecchettin's death prompted a debate in Italy which continues to this day about whether the country has a deep-rooted culture and tolerance incidents of violence against women.
The top story this hour, some parties in Parliament say the proposed plan to terminate the rental agreement of the Student Financial Aid Scheme NSFAS headquarters in Cape Town will help cut costs for the beleaguered entity. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemele.
In his sports this hour, Raducanu withdraws from Beijing Open and F1 drivers to meet to discuss Verstappen punishment. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the R21 southbound in Tembisa has roadworks reported with traffic restrictions near the engine services, so expect delays. The N1 northbound has roadworks with traffic restrictions near the R557 Enadel exit and Eskom Partleli Drive northbound in Pretoria, slow moving towards Moot Street. In KZN, the M4 northbound has roadworks with one lane open towards the Lelusha Mall exit. That's causing delays. The N3 eastbound has roadworks reported. The right lane's closed between Sadara and Hilton exit. And the M7 has roadworks with traffic restrictions towards the Belle Road, Wakesley Road junction. In Cape Town, slow-moving traffic in the central Muizenberg area. Victoria Road is slow-moving in the Camps Bay area and slow-moving traffic on local routes around the Sea Point Pavilion precinct. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
For 18 years, Kumbulekaya has been fostering healing through forgiveness and reconciliation.
Are you asking me that?
Yes.
I grew up without a mom.
So what happened to your family?
What family? You are my family. What happened to you?
Witness as families forgive one another and reunite after a long time. Catch the new season of Kumbulekaya on SABC1 every Wednesday at 9 p.m.
Kickstart your journey to success in 2025 with the Durban University of Technology. DUT offers programs in the faculties of Accounting and Informatics, Applied Sciences, Arts and Design, Engineering and the Built Environment, Health Sciences and Management Sciences, open for applications for 2025. Applications close on 30th September 2024, but dates may vary. Visit dut.ac.za for a full list of available programs and entry requirements. Apply now through the Central Applications Office by visiting cao.ac.za.
The world's best cooking show is finally here. MasterChef South Africa Season 5. You'll meet 20 talented home cooks from around Mzansi, noma uphumaphi, and no matter your favorite dish. See if the chefs can handle the heat in the kitchen in a race to be crowned MasterChef South Africa. Every Saturday, 7:30 p.m. only on S3 Channel 193. MasterChef South Africa, the world's best cooking show, proudly sponsored by Pick n Pay.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Welcome to the National Pulse. My name is Oliver Dickson. Thank you so much for being with me this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. Coming to you live on the radio. You can also stream us live on our SAFM YouTube channel as well as on our social media pages, particularly on X. It is at SAFM Radio. Follow us and watch the show live there. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be speaking a little while to the South African Weather Services. They're issued new warnings saying that as the snow begins to melt, residents can expect potential flooding. We're going to be talking about the relationship between flooding and snow and the quantum of snow that they have recorded over the weekend. We then, a little bit later on, going to be speaking to political analyst Professor Dirk Kotzer, reflecting on 100 days of the governing coalition, the Government of National Unity, as they call themselves. And then we're going to be speaking to Tulufelo Mugame, who's an SABC News reporter, on that story in Rustenburg where the local municipality has started the process of installing water and sanitation pipes in an informal settlement in Rustenburg, the Popo Mulife informal settlement. But residents remain disgruntled at the pace at which this is taking place. All of that and more coming up in this hour. We've got lots more coming up on the show for you a little bit later on. We're going to be speaking to correctional services on their financial statements for the 2023-2024 year. They'll be missing that. What does that tell us about the state of governance and affairs over there? That is coming up on the show. Follow me on X. It is at Oliver_speaking. On Twitter, Oliver Dickson on Facebook. Give us a call, 086 000 2032. You can also send us a WhatsApp voice on 0614 104 107, 10 minutes after 4.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Lihlogonolo Tobela, who's a meteorologist at the South African Weather Service, joins us now. The South African Weather Service and the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs in KZN have warned Midlands residents to be aware of potential flooding as the snow begins to melt. How bad could it get? Lihlogonolo, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. Welcome to the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me. Yes, so here, and I think most of these flooding conditions over the central and the northern parts of KwaZulu-Natal was due to obviously the rain that was there, but with snow also melting might result in some more of the water of the areas. But seems to be cleared right now, and it's clearing over time as more and more of the rain and showers is clearing over most parts of KwaZulu-Natal as we speak. I mean, now we just have isolated showers and rain over the south coast covering just the eastern part of the Western Cape as well as the central and the western part of the Eastern Cape province. So it's cleared, but it was obviously maintained over last night and just from Saturday into Sunday, and last night was still having that warning, but now it has cleared and we're seeing roads are open and people can travel.
Yeah. Importantly here is, are there specific areas in the Midlands that have been identified where the largest amount of snow was recorded, which could potentially result in the largest amount of flooding?
Yeah, I think there's the road R74 as well as the N3 into KwaZulu-Natal, especially those areas that were leading into Harrismith all the way to Bergville and areas under Berg. Just those areas between, obviously, traveling between Free State into KwaZulu-Natal. Those areas were quite severe in terms of the snow measurements measured between 15 centimeters to about 30 centimeters. So with that happening, but now it's starting to clear. Even the snow is seen into it's starting to melt, and the observations are quite clear, and people are starting to travel on the roads. And we're still expecting warmer days into Wednesday as well as Thursday over those areas, less of showers and rain, no rain that's forecasted for that area for the next coming 3 days into the weekend. So we're seeing just an improvement, especially even with temperatures. They're moving from warm to hot, especially the northern parts, just north of Ulundi, Vryheid, and areas just moving over to Mpumalanga. So it's quite a relief to see an improvement in the roads.
Black ice takes quite a while to clear as well. That may cause slippery roads. Do you have meteorological data around how long it might take the black ice to dissipate?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as the sun starts to shine more and more and it gets to be warm, by tomorrow afternoon I think everything would have been changed and starting to be normal as back to what it was normal. Today it's still fairly cool in terms of temperatures, and it's not much of sunshine, as well as the clouds are still covering, and it's not really improving as quick as we'd expect it to. But by tomorrow, looks like things will start by late afternoon into Wednesday. Wednesday roads to start being clear.
Yeah, thank you so much for that update, and thank you so much for giving us some of those details. If you are in that area, please do take note of that warning around flooding, particularly as Lithonolas tells us on the R74 as well as on the N3 into KZN, where there could be potential flooding, snow reaching levels of up to 30 centimeters, which seems like quite a bit, and just be on the lookout for warnings coming in from the weather services, but more importantly from the disaster management authorities if you are in a low-lying area that is prone to flooding. Give us a call, 086 000 2032. I'm taking your WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good afternoon, Oliver and your team. Happy Heritage Month. Oliver, our disaster management in South Africa, they don't have equipment, they don't have nothing. Even our government, they are not doing nothing. They just relies on gift of the givers, are the one who act. Our government, they don't care, they don't do nothing. Even this GNU, they don't do nothing, they keep quiet. Gift of the givers are acting like the government. They've got the resource, they've got everything, but our government, they don't have nothing. No, it is very disappointing. Very, very disappointing. And I did think we can't keep quiet every time. Like our government, when they come into the disaster, doesn't do nothing. Gift of the givers are taking the whole of government. Come on, this thing is going too far. We can't keep quiet. Space in Matosana. Good afternoon, SAFM listeners. Good afternoon, Oliver Atuka here in Matlosan. UN, AU, all of these bodies, tear them down, start afresh. They are meaningless. There is nothing meaningful that they actually achieve. Even the little things that you can talk about them, Oliver, when you go to those places where there was supposed to be meaningful change, it's just not there for the people that stay there. So what is the point of having international bodies, right, where all the heads of states are set to discuss world peace and all of those things, if the US, Russia, China, South Africa, whichever countries can just come and say we're using our veto power over a majority? What is the point? It's meaningless, man. All of it. Redo the entire system. It's meaningless as is.
Morning, sir. Good afternoon. Sorry, sir. This extortion story, I'm afraid the manner the government is approaching this story, I don't think this random arrest and the manner they approach, this is a national crisis. It's a pandemic. I don't think the manner government tries to address this thing will happen. Random arrests are nothing to this, given the gravity and what we call the history of these things. There are vigilante groups. 2 years later, there will be rebel groups. This thing must be arrested. It's going to cause more harm, economic and social harm, to the republic, to the people. Government must follow this thing, unleash the law enforcement agencies into this thing and stop it now. 2 years later, this thing is going to graduate into something very difficult to police and to manage.
I think we must take that warning incredibly serious. It might sound very doomsdayish and very alarmist, but we really have a ticking time bomb of vigilante groups sitting on our hand, operating as extortion rings, which are very common across the African continent. It's not unusual, and if it remains unabated in South Africa, may very well turn into that. Quite literally, there are parts of South America and Latin America where every town, every city is run by a gang and an extortionist group, a vigilante group of some sort. If you look at countries like Brazil, for instance, Venezuela, Honduras, it's exactly what's happening over there. South Africa is not too far from that if we do not take serious the extent of extortionist crime that has crept into our communities.
Hello, speaking to Anonymous in Kingston. I am a 22-year-old that had a cataract that was removed in both my eyes. At that time, I didn't ask what's causing the cataract on young adults, because it usually happens on older people. So I just wanted to find out from your doctor, what's the cause of the cataracts on young adults?
That's a very, very good question. Thank you so much for that. We will forward that question actually to Dr. Mate, and perhaps we can get a response before that, and perhaps read you out the response that we get from Dr. Mate. Keep those coming in, 0614-104-107. You can send us your WhatsApp voice notes on 0614-104-107. On the other side of this, we speak to Tulufelo Mugame, who's an SABC News reporter, and this is on the installation of water and sanitation pipes in the Popo Molefe informal settlement in Rustenburg. The community remains disgruntled, particularly at the delays at which this is taking place, and to formalize the area as well, where services can and should be provided. Then after that, we're going to be speaking to Professor Dirk Kotze on the GNU reaching 100 days. On the other side of this,
there's no road our buckies haven't traveled on. Roads to new beginnings. Roads to many firsts.
Sansa, enjoy your day at school.
Roads to delivering precious cargo.
Breathe, honey. We're almost there.
Even roads to saving the day.
Hey, Om, we're going to have to tow you.
With every road that we've traveled for 45 years, we are what a buckie should be. Bold, capable, and reliable. Introducing the new limited edition D-Max 45, equipped with everything you need for every kind of adventure. Isuzu, with you for the long run. Standard Bank Group, the biggest bank in Africa by assets, in partnership with SOAS, will host the 4th Annual Climate Summit on 1 October. This summit will host insightful discussions with various industry experts in charting Africa's course to net zero.
The annual summit is one of Standard Bank's sustainability initiatives dedicated to driving growth on the African continent. Tune in to the SAFM Facebook page and be part of the conversation in shaping the future of Africa's energy transition. Brought to you by Standard Bank Corporate and Investment Banking.
When self-made billionaire Wilton Knight rescues police detective Lieutenant Michael Long after a near-fatal shot to the face, he gives him a new identity and a new name, Michael Knight. Paired with the unique Knight Industries 2000 aka kit, they are brought in during situations where direct action might provide the only feasible solution. Kusazo Shuba and Michael Knight and Kit are ready to rise to the occasion. Channel your best retro with Knight Rider, weekdays at 12 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
You tune into the National Pulse. My name is Oliver Dickson. An informal settlement in Rustenburg, the Popo Molefe informal settlement, have been receiving water and sanitation pipes installations. However, the community complains about delays to formalize the area. The formalization of an informal settlement gives it an entitlement to services provision, and that is an important part of community governance. SABC News reporter Tumuleng Kajane joins us for this. Tumuleng, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. Welcome to the National Pulse.
Good afternoon to you. It's Ulfalo Mohami. Thank you. Good afternoon to you and the listeners.
Thank you so much. Really apologize for that. Perhaps to start here, tell us about the history of the Popo Molefe informal settlement, when the informal settlement had come about and how long they had been struggling with the province and the local government in Rustenburg to get water and sanitation provision to the informal settlement.
The residents are raising concerns about the poor service delivery from the municipality, particularly water and sanitation projects. They say 5 projects were initiated 5 months ago, but only two are currently underway.
Importantly here is when did the installation of the pipes begin?
The installation began 5 months back, yes, according to the...
Yeah, and how long were they? What was the timeline that was promised?
They never told us about the timeline that they were supposed to be done.
Yeah. What does the community say about the formalization of the community and the provision of services? Because that has been the cause of contention between the community and the local government.
We spoke to the Rustenburg local municipality and they confirmed that they are working on formalizing more than 13 informal settlements in Rustenburg, and now they are in Popo Molefe informal settlement in Dickson.
Have they given any information around how long the formalization of an informal settlement takes and what the channels are that it needs to go through?
The municipality never stated how long this project will take.
And how big, very specifically, how big is the informal settlement of Popo Molefe?
There are more than 100 residents so we can confirm the number of the informal settlement space.
And currently, where do they get water from, given that they do not have water and sanitation pipes that bring or at least give water to the community at the moment?
The residents say they've never received a proper water supply from the municipality. So they are getting water from the river. Some are getting water from the pipes that they themselves initiated that they are going to get water from.
So what river is this? Do you have a sense of the river?
Pardon?
Do you have a sense of what river this is?
I can't hear you.
Do you have a sense of what river this is that the community is getting water from?
No.
Right. And are they not being provided with water tankers by the municipality in the interim?
No, they are not being provided by water tanks from the municipality. They are just taps around the informal settlement. Those taps, according to the municipality, the residents connected leaks from the municipality. Yes.
Mm. Do they have electricity, and where do they get the electricity from if they do have?
They also connected illegally from the municipality electricity. The municipality never provided them with the proper electricity.
Has the municipality said anything about electrifying the community properly? That is to say, the installation of a transformer and transmitters, so that they can have electricity in their households, very specifically as they formalize them.
The municipality stated that once they are done with this project, all the informal settlements will have proper water and supply.
Mm. The housing question has also been a big question by the Popo Molefe informal settlement. Have they been told anything by the municipality or the province around housing?
I can hear you.
Housing has also been a big issue by the minister in the Popo Molefe informal settlement. Have they been told anything by the municipality or the provincial government around whether or not they'll be given social housing?
No, now they are saying they are starting with this water and sanitation project. After that, they will also assist with other services.
Mm. And just lastly, is there a deadline on to when the municipality said the installation of water and sanitation pipes will be done by?
No, they never told us about the deadline when this project will be done.
Yeah. To the Philip Muhammad, SABC News reporter, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. Give us a call, 086 000 2032. I'm taking your WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. 26 minutes after 4.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
I'm taking your reactions to any of the stories that we've had here in the first hour and a half of the show. We've spoken about quite a lot. You can give us a call on 086 000 2032. You can send us your WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. And you can tweet me at Oliver_speaking. Let's speak to Faisal in Middleburg. Faisal, good afternoon.
Hi, Oliver.
Hi, Faisal. Go for it.
Good afternoon. First time call, right. So, Oliver, I get the impression that this government sells us hope each time there's an election. Point in case, or case in point rather, with the snow chaos that we had on the N3 over the past weekend, you would have expected emergency services that had to be deployed there as a preemptive measure. The thing is, why does it have to take NGOs and private individuals to actually sort the situation out? And a similar thing happened when we had those riots in KZN as well. There was no law enforcement until after the event, and I think as a South African citizen, taxpaying citizen, I think we need to hold this government accountable much more than what we do each time we have an election.
I just perhaps have a question. I think that I've heard this question a number of times over the last couple of days that I think might be a fair question. How ready did we expect the government to be, particularly given that snow is not a common thing in South Africa? So, for instance, road clearing machinery, snow scrapers are not things we would typically expect the municipality or the local disaster management authority to have in great quantities. How prepared would we have expected prepared to be?
Accepted from an equipment perspective, but I think from a personnel perspective, they could have deployed a massive amount of human resource to be able to manage the situation in anticipation, because even the Kokta minister mentioned that in future they would want to close the roads. They should have actually anticipated this thing long before the event.
Right. Fair point. Faisal, thanks a lot for your call. Appreciate it. Faisal calling us there from Middleburg. Let's speak to Pochisho in Maikeng. Pochisho, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm a little bit worried with this the story of Israel and Lebanon. Because we too, with South African, we are also on the side of Lebanon and Palestine. Hello, sir.
Okay, I'm listening.
Yes, I'm a little bit worried because, I don't know, I'm asking myself question time and again, that if you support somebody and then you differ with maybe with the enemy, then you have to be victimized in that way. But I, on behalf of South Africa, I worried because we South Africans, we are standing on the side of Palestine. Maybe at any time, we can be attacked in the same way like Palestine.
Who is likely to attack South Africa?
No, maybe Israel.
Right. And what would they do? Send drone bombs to South Africa?
No. The same way they do with Lebanon.
Right. I mean, Lebanon is in the region, right? So they're easily accessible. South Africa's on the other side of the world.
Okay.
Look, I'm not saying they won't do anything. I'm definitely not saying that. The retaliatory efforts in warfare is quite common. I'm just not sure what it is they could do. So I think there is legitimacy to your worry. I'm just not sure what that would look like.
Okay. No. I was just thinking about it because it looks as if whenever you support somebody or you stand on the side of somebody,
yeah,
at the end of the day, you become a victim.
Okay, fair point. Thanks a lot for your call. I really do appreciate it. Borisho calling us there from Mahikeng. It is 31 minutes after 4 p.m. Let's take your latest headlines.
A very good afternoon with the news headlines. Ahead of Heritage Day tomorrow, President Cyril Ramaphosa has called on business and other stakeholders to work with the government in the cause of heritage prevention, particularly in marginalized communities. Some parties in Parliament say the proposed plan to terminate the rental agreement of the Student Financial Aid Scheme NSFAS headquarters in Cape Town will help cut costs for the beleaguered entity. And the media in Somalia is reporting that an Egyptian ship has delivered a significant consignment of military equipment to that country. For SAFM News, Kimudupi Makhaleme.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, Voortrekker Road northbound in Alberton has a crash reported at the N12 highway and Eskom Patleli Drive northbound in Pretoria, slow moving towards Moot Street. In KZN, the N3 has roadworks with traffic restrictions between Pyramid Hotel and Van Renen Village, and the N2 southbound has a stationary track reported before the M25 Commercial Highway. In Cape Town, the M5 Prince George Drive has protest action reported in that Lavender Hill area, so expect delays and diversions. Main Road is slow moving through Cork Bay, and Victoria Street outbound slow moving through Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Khapele.
Dumi is back with your latest sports update. Did you watch the Pirates game with Zhuaneng? That's what they called, right?
Zhuaneng. Yes.
What an interesting game. What an interesting name.
Why did you find interesting about it?
So I didn't watch all of it. I watched parts of it. The dynamics of the game were very interesting to me. Pirates seems to have a different style of play when they play PSL teams versus when they play like CAF teams. Did you watch it?
I did. I think I watched the first half. And you are right. They do have a different strategy compared to them playing in the PSL versus going out there because, first of all, it's different. It's a different country. It's a club in a different country. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A lot at stake, and not that I'm saying that the PSL is not that much at stake. However, they want to qualify for the Champions League, which is big. So obviously, they'd have to make sure that their strategies are on point when they go to compete against the likes of Zhuaneng that beat them last time out last year. So,
they've lost to Zhuaneng before.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes. This is the first time I've heard of Zhuaneng. To be very honest. Do you think intercontinental matches and intracontinental matches for local franchises makes our local league better?
It does, because then you get to be exposed to the toughness of it all. We've always heard from Sundowns players saying that playing in the country versus playing in Africa is completely
especially
different. Especially in North Africa, and also just the conditions as a whole there. And I mean, we know that African players generally, besides South Africa, they're very big and they're very out there. So in terms of their play and the play that we have in South Africa, completely different.
Okay. Look, they're playing tomorrow, Polokwane FC, I think. I'm feeling very, as a Pirates fan, I'm
Are you a
feeling
Pirates
very,
fan?
yeah, I'm feeling very positive about this PSL season.
I'm also somehow positive with you. But listen, these are the beginning days.
Yeah, early days. Kaiser Chiefs mustn't get excited. What do you have for us?
All right, we start things off with tennis this hour, where Emma Raducanu has pulled out of this week's China Open in Beijing because of a foot injury. The 21-year-old had to retire injured from her Korea Open quarterfinal on Saturday because of the issue. Raducanu's name appeared in the Beijing draw when it was released today before she withdrew shortly afterwards. Meanwhile, in Formula One, Grand Prix Drivers Association Chairman Alex Woz has confirmed that the F1 drivers will meet internally to discuss Max Verstappen's FIA punishment for swearing. Verstappen received an obligation from the FIA to complete a day's public service for swearing during last Thursday's FIA press conference ahead of the Singapore Grand Prix. And Verstappen says that his punishment for swearing could lead him to reconsider his F1 future. The 26-year-old actually subsequently staged a protest in the press conferences following qualifying on Saturday and Sunday races, in which he limited his answers to journalists in the room. I find this punishment very interesting. What are your thoughts on it?
I'm okay with it if it happened during a live race and a broadcast. From a broadcasting perspective, I get it. But if it's a press conference, no, man. Come on. Because it's heightened emotions. You're going to say some expletives when you're like losing, not doing well. I think it's a bit of an overkill.
I guess. He says his patience was tested, but we'll see if he'll actually quit F1 if this continues. But moving on to football, Mamelodi Sundowns coach Manqoba Mngqithi says that he's happy that they are building good momentum right at the start of the league season. Sundowns have now won 3 games in a row since their back-to-back defeat to Stellenbosch FC in the MTN8 Cup. And the 3 matches that they've won, Sundowns managed an impressive 10 goals in total, something that excited Mngqithi.
I'm happy that the team is beginning to score, because my main quest was to try and see this team scoring a lot of. I believe we are in that direction, and they understand that I'm not a fan of just football without goals or without attacks or without termination of attacks. And I think we are getting into that mode of knowing that if we initiate an attack, we consolidate it to terminate it, and we start again, so that we create traction in terms of the number of chances we created, in terms of the number of shots at goals, because it would not help us to have possession maybe for 15-20 minutes only if we are going to go once and take a shot. So 20 minutes can only give you one shot at goal. It will not help. But if we try to have many segments of attacks that are terminated, not necessarily to rush, but to try and build a team that is geared at creating as many opportunities as possible, and I think we are on the right track.
In women's football, University of Cape Town women's team coach Ahmed Parker says that they are hoping to fill the void that has been left by Vasco da Gama and become the second Western Cape team in the Hollywood Bet Super League. UCT qualified for the Sasol League national playoffs after defeating Magic FC 3-0 over the weekend, and they were crowned Sasol League Provincial Championships. Now, the Cape Townians are part of 9 teams that will contest the National Championship from the 15th to the 20th of October in the Western Cape, and Parker says that they draw inspiration from their neighbours UWC.
UWC being in the National Women's League, in the Hollywood Bets National Women's League, has to be an inspiration to the rest of us Cape Townians. With Vasco da Gama having made it a couple of years ago, we want to follow in their footsteps, and hopefully we will be able to sustain it a little bit differently to what Vasco was able to. But they inspired us, and we've played against them before, and we are hoping to fill that void for sure and do even better, hopefully with a little bit of learnings from the experiences that they've gained from playing in the Hollywood Bets League as well.
In golf, Scottie Scheffler has maintained his place at the top of the world rankings. South Africa's Tristan Lawrence moved up 15 spots to lie in 47th, and he's 2 places behind compatriot Christian Bezuidenhout. On that note, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour.
Man, what an unbelievable season Scottie's had. It's just crazy. He made so much money. The last person to make that kind of money was Tiger Woods in a single season.
Sure.
He owes his caddy, apparently. They betted and the caddy won a bet.
I wonder how much.
Yeah. To the people at Nedbank, if you're listening, please bring Scottie Scheffler to the Nedbank Golf Challenge in December. It would be great to have him in South Africa. It's 20 minutes before the top of the hour.
Have you recently migrated to the new TV licenses payment website? Make sure your account stays active by registering again or resetting your password. Don't miss out on all the fantastic new features our brand new website offers. Get registered today and stay connected with us. With the new website, get your payments done quickly and hassle-free with a wide range of services. So make sure you register to take advantage of all the great client features. Visit www.tvlic.co.za today. TV licenses. Do it for the things that matter.
Hey, Mike, congratulations on your retirement.
Thanks, Andile. Are you preparing for it?
Yes, but not just for myself.
For you and?
For me and my employees.
Oh.
You know, since we moved to Old Mutual Corporate, their retirement funds have not only been safe and secure, but gaining competitive returns through exposure to diverse investment markets.
Impressive.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
Weeknights on S3 are anything but ordinary. BBC Primetime brings you the best of British television from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Open your mind to Life on Death Row, Thursdays at 9 p.m. and Resistance in a Hostile Environment, a 3-part documentary showcasing turning points which would go on to define race relations in the UK for a generation. Thursdays at 10 p.m. Wind down your weeknights with The Outlaws, Fridays at 9 p.m. and explore the world's most dangerous roads at 10 p.m. Channel your best entertainment with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Makwe Masilela is here. He's the Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers, taking a look at the local and international markets this afternoon. Makwe, it's what the sobriety coming in from last week's interest rate drop must have settled in. Are we looking at a more positive capital markets?
We are, Oliver, and good afternoon to you and to the listeners. Oliver, equity markets kicked off the week on a positive note as market participants looked to more interest rate cuts to help the global economy, and amid expectation that China may ramp up efforts to revive growth. And today, China announced plans for a rare economic briefing for tomorrow by 3 of their top financial regulators, just after cutting one of its short-term policy rates, fueling speculation that fresh stimulus is on the way. Even though it's a short week back home, there's lots of economic data that could easily be catalyst, like our quarterly employment numbers, August producer price inflation, and overseas there's US Fed preferred price metric and the data on personal spending. And in Europe, Oliver, traders are digesting manufacturing data that came in worse than expected, that itself raising expectations of aggressive rate cuts from the European Central Bank. And with almost 101 days in power, the formation of our GNU, which is seen as business-friendly, has triggered a wave of investment announcements, and there's positive sentiments not seen in years. Oil traders still cheering a jumbo rate cut and expectations of more cuts before the end of the year, with Middle East tension lending a hand that helped to counter the weak Chinese demand. We see Brent crude is up 0.5% at $75 a barrel, and strong market sentiment and geopolitical tensions continue to lead the yellow metal to record highs, and as it is, gold is up 0.3% at 2,630, but platinum is down 1.2% at 965. And yes, stocks are building on last week's momentum, with the JSE up 1% as our resources are doing most of the heavy lifting. The rand firmed almost 0.5% against the US dollar, is now 17.31, 23.11 against the pound, and 19.28 against the euro.
Makwe, thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate it. Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. President Ramaphosa is in New York addressing business leaders on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. Let's take you live there.
Fossil fuel energy production to renewable energy sources, whilst at the same time ensuring equitable economic opportunities and social inclusion for affected communities. And our country's and Africa's critical mineral sector has a crucial role to play in this regard, and we recognize the importance of collaboration, of working together with other countries to develop the potential of our critical mineral sector. The US in particular has established a great deal of expertise in a number of areas that fuel the mining sector, such as automation, innovation, and sustainable practices, and we welcome that. We want to strengthen our ties with US companies and institutions to foster further technological advancement and to enhance supply chain efficiencies and attract investment into our mining sector. South Africa strongly endorses the United Nations Secretary General's position paper on critical energy transition minerals, which my dear sister, Ms. Diseko, has been involved in as well as one of the key coordinators, where the SG highlights the importance of beneficiation, benefit sharing, human rights, local value addition, and economic diversification. It would not be an understatement to say that the minerals that lie beneath the soil of not only South Africa, but the soil of various countries on our continent are powering the energy revolution, the green energy revolution in the world. 30% of the world's proven critical mineral reserves are found in sub-Saharan Africa. South Africa has substantial reserves, as we heard earlier, of platinum group metals, manganese, vanadium, as well as chromium. These resources are fundamental to the development of cutting-edge technologies that drive progress in various sectors. What will be critical is to ensure that this progress does not leave Africa behind. So the extraction of these critical minerals must not perpetuate colonial era patterns of exploitation of the continent's rich resources, where the past colonial powers, through their companies, came into the continent, extracted just the minerals, and exported them to their own countries, and beneficiated them, and in turn sold back to our countries the finished products. We want to reverse that whole practice. And I was rather pleased, was it a year or so ago, when I was in Paris at one of the summits that we held to discuss how we can restructure the financial architecture of the world, when one of the key leaders in Europe actually said that we should now, as the importing countries, that is the Europeans, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere, ensure that as we invest in mineral extraction, we also side by side invest in processing. And he was quite bold and firm on this assertion, and I welcomed that. And I was glad that the message that we've been beaming on the beneficiation of minerals and of processing is beginning to gain traction. And as it stands, most African countries export critical minerals primarily in their raw form. By focusing on basic extraction and not on beneficiation and value-added processing of minerals, Africa is both missing out as well as losing out. By some estimates, extraction of select minerals could boost the region's GDP by up to 12% or more in the coming years, say by 2050. However, this is really, in the end, a fraction of the benefits that could be reaped from processing and beneficiation. By some estimates, African countries could generate easily up to $24 billion a year in GDP and create 2.3 million jobs from investing in mining beneficiation and domestic processing. We are making progress, however. By way of example, one of our key companies represented here, Sasol, which is our flagship petrochemical company, is also a leader in green hydrogen technologies, including research and development, as are other companies as well, like Anglo-American, who have taken major steps in exploiting the hydrogen technologies. As the global automotive industry moves towards electric vehicles and new energy vehicles, we are leveraging on what I would call our new rich experience with automotive production to get some of the world's leading automotive manufacturers with a footprint in South Africa to produce more of their green vehicles in our own country. As you may well know, we've got a number of original equipment manufacturers who manufacture cars located in South Africa, and we're seeing a great deal of interest and attraction to our market. Without revealing anything later today, I'll be meeting the key leaders in Tesla, who are also looking at our market to see how far they can go in using South Africa as a launch pad for some of their products. Although South Africa's ratio of beneficiated to primary products exported continues to improve, we clearly need to do much more than this. And according to the IMF, the global market for critical minerals is expected to total approximately $16 trillion over the next 25 years. Africa is therefore perfectly positioned to leverage this demand for its benefit. And it demonstrates that, yes, indeed, Africa and indeed South Africa is well positioned as an investment destination for those who want to capture this benefit that could flow from it. As a country, South Africa is committed to creating a supportive policy framework for critical minerals. Our policy approach has 5 key elements. The first is to simplify and streamline regulations and the regulatory approvals for critical minerals extraction and processing. Last year, we had a really wonderful meeting with U.S. businesses where they raised a number of issues, and there were not too many. I was actually surprised about the regulatory framework, which they saw as improving and getting better on an ongoing basis. And we are moving forward, and that is what our structural reforms are pivoted on. Yes, there are areas where we're moving a little bit slower than what we should, but we are pointing in the right direction, and our reforms are beginning to gain traction. Secondly, to implement measures to support research and development, yes, in mining technologies, but also to bump up our own R&D expenditure. By fostering innovation, we aim to enhance extraction efficiency and to reduce costs and to drive technological advancement in the sector. The third area is to invest in programs to build the skills as well as capabilities of our workers. This includes training and development initiatives to ensure that South Africa has a skilled labor force capable of meeting the demands of the modern mining sector. The skills development area is one of those areas where the past misrulers of our country did us a great deal of damage and disservice because they deliberately focused on ensuring that black South Africans do not really accede to a higher level of skills, and in many ways this has been holding us back because, as we well know, education is a generational process that takes a number of years, but over the last 30 years we have been seeing some improvements, but we need to see more. The fourth area is to prioritize investments in transport and logistics and to improve the efficiency of mineral supply chains. And we've been very fortunate in this area, having realized that we need to improve the efficiency of our supply chain sector through the improving logistics. We set up a presidential working group to work with business, and I'm glad that one of those who are involved with us in this area, Ms. Zikalala from Kumba Resources and Anglo-American, is here because she is one of those who bears testimony to our resolve to ensure that our logistics sector does improve, and we're beginning to see improvements because in many ways that is what has been holding the companies like hers back. So we are upgrading our ports, our railways, and the roads to support the seamless movement of minerals from mines to global markets. The fifth area is to incentivize, yes, domestic as well as international investment in the critical mineral sector. And this includes tax incentives, grants, and areas that need that, and also support mechanisms to encourage investment in exploration, production, and technological development. So South Africa has a beneficiation strategy that seeks to translate the benefits of our country's mineral endowments into a national competitive advantage. As the UN Secretary General said in his paper, which Mr. Seko was talking to, has noted, critical energy transition minerals can transform economies, they can create green jobs, and they can foster sustainable local, regional, and global development. For this unique opportunity to meet its promise and fully realize its potential, it will be key that both mineral-producing countries and the countries that are the end destination for these minerals strive for inclusivity. The extraction and processing of these critical minerals must create, yes, work opportunities for communities, but they must also not close a blind eye to the developmental needs, particularly of the areas where they are invested. One of my past activities was that of being a union leader, and I had the honor and the privilege to lead mine workers for 9 years, and moving from mine to mine, going to areas where mines that are multi-billion rand, if you like, multi-billion rand dollar businesses, where you would see how they invest a lot of money and extract the minerals, but also be able to just build roads where infrastructure wasn't present, including water and electricity. And some of these mines would have local villages near them. And those local villages will forever, for years, not even have the water. And yet the mining companies would be pumping water from a water resource into the mine, bypassing those villages. And those villagers would forever remain poor. And we are now saying any investment should be beneficial. We should be inclusive and should foster the development of communities around where the investment takes place.
That is President Cyril Ramaphosa addressing business leaders in New York on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly, flanked by several South African business leaders, including Mpumi Zikalala, who is the CEO of Kumba, which is a subsidiary of Anglo-American, Kumba Iron Ore, for instance, participating in helping fix South Africa's mineral supply chain and logistics, as President Ramaphosa speaks there. There are several areas he's addressing in that speech that he has spoken to, such as very specifically exploiting South Africa's precious metals in relation to the green hydrogen projects that have been undertaken in the presidency. Importantly, they're saying that companies like Tesla, who he has now told us he will be meeting with, it's not clear if Elon Musk specifically will be the person he's meeting with, but he said he's meeting with the leaders of Tesla to talk to them about the potential of green hydrogen in South Africa, electric vehicle manufacturing, and invite them into the South African market to manufacture their vehicles here. Those are some of the things he had mentioned there, speaking about some of the reforms in our institutions. Earlier on he had spoken about Eskom, but now speaking very specifically on Transnet and getting mineral supply chain back on its feet. He hasn't explicitly spoken about the collapse of Transnet. He hasn't mentioned it by name, but is effectively speaking to those conditionalities, speaking about the advisory working group that he set up in the office of the presidency to work on that very specifically. We'll bring you more of that if he continues to speak on the other side of our news. It is now 5 o'clock. Midupi Makalimele has your latest.
Thank you, Oliver Grekos, with your latest news update. Madupi has left the building. Call to work with government on heritage preservation, and motorists urged to remain cautious on the roads. Good day to you. Ahead of Heritage Day tomorrow, President Cyril Ramaphosa has called on business and other stakeholders to work with government in the cause of heritage preservation, especially in marginalised communities. In his weekly letter to the nation today, Ramaphosa says South Africa's diverse heritage is one of the country's most valuable assets. However, he's lamented the uneven private support for heritage sites. Busi Chemombe reports.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says a lack of support for less prominent heritage sites outside those like Robben Island, the Mandela House in Soweto, and Constitutional Hill, has resulted in these falling into disrepair. He says this is a wasted opportunity, as these sites can provide work opportunities in the communities in which they are situated. He says it is the responsibility of government, together with the private sector, corporate sponsors, and philanthropies, to ensure these legacies and safeguard them for future generations. Busichi Mombe, SABC News.
Some political parties in Parliament say the proposed plan to terminate the rental agreement of the headquarters of the National Student Financial Aid Scheme in Cape Town will help cut costs for the beleaguered entity. This after the Minister of Higher Education announced that the monthly multi-million rand rental lease will be terminated. The chairperson of Portfolio Committee on Higher Education in Parliament is Tupogo Letsi.
It doesn't make sense when one NSFAS complains that the administrative budget is too low. Two, we believe that they should use that money that they will save from there. They should use the money to capacitate themselves even more.
Meanwhile, the DA says no government entity should be enjoying a monthly rental of 2.5 million rand a month. DA MP Karabo Kakao.
We had been making the same call, but there was little to no budge on the call for NSFAS to move that office. But now there's a greater appetite to listen to the voice of reason that the Democratic Alliance is and the solutions that they bring to the table around the order of business. So certainly the GNU is on the right track.
The Hawks in the Free State are investigating a case of murder following the stabbing to death of a police officer attached to the Bultfontein Visible Policing Unit. It's alleged the officer and his crew were responding to a complaint of a fight. He was stabbed with a sharp object and declared dead on the scene. Police backup arrived and then resulted in 3 suspects being cornered at the same premises and shot and killed. They locked themselves in the house, blocking both doors, and set the house on fire. The government communication and information system has urged road users to drive cautiously as some roads remain slippery. This after all roads affected by the recent snowstorm, including the N3 toll route, have been reopened to traffic. These include key routes in Gauteng, the Free State, in Mpumalanga, KZN and the Eastern Cape. The extensive backlog of traffic between KZN and the Free State has also been cleared. 1 person died due to hypothermia. Finally, the media in Somalia are reporting that an Egyptian ship has delivered a significant consignment of military equipment to the country. The BBC's Will Ross has the details.
There's no longer a UN arms embargo on Somalia, so the arrival of military equipment from Egypt could be seen as just a normal business deal between the two governments. But there are circumstances that suggest it could be linked to a wider geopolitical feud. Cairo is explicitly backing Mogadishu in its dispute with Ethiopia. Somalia is furious that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed signed a deal with the self-declared Republic of Somaliland to lease a section of its coastline. Somalia sees Somaliland as part of its territory. Ethiopia has troops in Somalia and Egypt plans to be part of a peacekeeping mission there. Adding to the tension is the long-running row over Ethiopia's dam on the River Nile.
The top story ahead of Heritage Day tomorrow, the President has called on businesses and other stakeholders to work with government in the cause of heritage preservation. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Hus.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. Voortrekker Road northbound in Alberton has a crash reported at the N12 highway, and Eskom Patleli Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Moot Street. In KZN, the N2 southbound has a stationary vehicle after Umgeni Road. The N2 southbound has a stationary truck before the M25 commercial highway, and Chris Hani Road has a fatal truck crash reported at Victor Road, so expect delays. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound is slow moving towards Okavango Road. Main Road is slow moving through Steenberg, and the M5 Prince George Drive has protest action reported in the Lavender Hill area, so expect delays and diversions. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
4 dynamic design duos reimagine and reinvent 4 apartments in a century-old building nestled in the vibrant suburb of Seapoint, Cape Town. Armed with creativity, determination, and a limited budget, the duos fight against the clock to transform this grand old dame into a contemporary masterpiece, all under the critical eyes of an expert judging panel. The winning duo will claim a grand prize of 300,000 Rand, with an additional 100,000 Rand going to the fan favorite team, as voted by viewers. Channel your inner wow with My Design Rules, Sundays at 7 p.m, only on S3. Open up.
S3. And we went on a water safari, and Mom spotted a hippo, and it said,
There is a place where you can see wonder and the wild, with breathtaking scenery and endless landscapes. Enjoy good food and embrace great taste.
And the next day we went to the Reed dance. I saw the maidens handing over reeds to the mighty Zulu king, and the Zulu warriors chanting, Baye!
Explore all this and more in the magical Zulu Kingdom.
This message is brought to you by KZN Tourism and Film Authority.
The wait is finally over, and we can safely say that Tropica Island of Treasure is back to serve you some really great entertainment. Tune into S3 from the 28th of September to cheer on the 7 teams who will be vying to win a shared prize of 1 million Rand, a brand new car each, and become the champions of Tropica Island of Treasure Season 11. Fancy 50,000 bucks? Predict the champions of Tropica Island of Treasure, and you might be sipping that cold, refreshing Tropica all the way to the bank. Follow at MyTropica and at SABC3 for more information. Channel your inner champion with Tropica Island of Treasure. Starts Saturday the 28th of September at 6:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
S3.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
You tune into the National Pulse. My name is Oliver Dickson. Thank you so much for being with us. A short while ago, President Ramaphosa addressed business leaders in New York on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly, where he spoke about several reforms in South Africa pertaining to energy, electricity, as well as, importantly, South Africa's logistics supply chain, particularly when it comes to mineral resources in our mining sector. We'll speak to SABC News reports a little bit later on to get into some more of the the minutiae of that speech that was delivered. And of course, he's flanked by several South African business leaders who will also be addressing that roundtable discussion on the sidelines. We'll bring you that detail a little bit later on. Coming up on the show in this hour, we're going to be in conversation a little bit later on with Professor Dirk Kotze on 100 days of the National Governing Coalition. They call themselves the GNU. We're going to be focusing on that. Earlier on, I had spoken to David van Wyk, who's a lead researcher at the Benchmarks Foundation, about illegal mining, specifically in the Northwest. We're going to be speaking to this hour Kgotatso Nhlengetwa, who is a special advisor to the National Association of Artisanal Miners. We're going to be speaking very specifically of artisanal miners who often find themselves on the wrong side of the law. And this is a distinction to be drawn between what artisanal miners are versus illegal miners who are sophisticated, that I spoke to David about earlier on. We're going to be speaking to that just in a short while. The Correctional Services Department will be missing their deadline for submitting financial statements, audited financial statements, on the 2023-2024 financial year. We're going to be speaking to Bulelani Phillips, a SABC News reporter, on what the reasons behind that is. Of course, they have to submit those financial statements not just to SCOPA, but as well as to the Auditor General, as well as the Presidency and National Treasury. Obviously, given that we're now in another budget cycle, in a few weeks, the Minister of Finance will be giving us the medium-term policy statement, which will give us adjusted indicators on economic performance as well as our fiscal position in the country. All of that and more coming up this hour. Give us a call, 086 000 2032. Send us a WhatsApp voice note on our WhatsApp line, 0614 104 107. Tweet me at Oliver_speaking, Oliver Dickson on Facebook, 10 minutes after 5.
The world's best cooking show is finally here. MasterChef South Africa Season 5. You'll meet 20 talented home cooks from around Mzansi, Noma Upumaphi, and no matter your favorite dish. See if the chefs can handle the heat in the kitchen in a race to be crowned MasterChef South Africa. Every Saturday, 7:30 p.m. only on S3, Channel 193. MasterChef South Africa, the world's best cooking show, proudly sponsored by Pick n Pay.
Channel Heritage Day your way on Afternoon Express on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. only on S3. As Chef Ruben Riffel braais lekker curried lamb skewers, we rock our traditional regalia, and Jules Harding of Good Luck celebrates her daughter Skylar's first Heritage Day, and it's orange malva pudding for dessert. That's Afternoon Express this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3.
Who says talking never solves anything? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
It is just about 12 minutes after 5 o'clock. You're listening to the National Pulse. My name is Oliver Dickson. I'm now in conversation with Kgotatso Nhlengetwa, who is a special advisor to the National Association of Artisanal Miners. If you missed my conversation earlier on with David van Wyk, lead researcher at Benchmarks Foundation, it's up on the SAFM website on our podcast tab. Then we spoke about the work of Operation Valamkoti and illegal mining in South Africa, very specifically drawing a distinctions about the different types of illegal mining that takes place in South Africa. Artisanal miners often find themselves on the wrong side of the law in mining in South Africa, very specifically given how tightly regulated a space it is, that you need certain licenses and permits to be able to operate in a mine. And artisanal miners, who themselves aren't necessarily sophisticated large corporations with vast resources, aren't always able to get to those permits, and their actions are often viewed as unregulated and illegal. Kgotatso, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to the show. Really appreciate it. Perhaps at a rudimentary level, it's important to start the conversation here. Describe to us what an artisanal miner is and what it's not.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me today. Let me start at the basics. Artisanal mining is a rudimentary form of mining that is typically community-based, or you can also find it in rural traditional areas. They use very rudimentary tools, and it's very basic, but sometimes you do find a degree of mechanization where they do have some things like ball mills and so on. But typically the difference between Zamazama mining and artisanal mining is the fact that it's community-based and it's traditional-based, and usually it is commissioned by the chiefs or the headmen within the traditional space.
Yeah, and oftentimes, like I said, it's a highly regulated space. If you do mine, you need certain permits. I'm assuming artisanal miners seldomly have the necessary permits?
Exactly, that's the case. It is informal. And the reason for this is because there really hasn't been any regulation for artisanal miners. Although there has been a mining policy that has been gazetted in 2022 that has put a policy in place for artisanal and small-scale mining, there is no real regulation or an act or a bill that's been promulgated that gives space for an artisanal miner to go and look for a permit. So we find that in regional level, even though they have formed cooperatives to try and formalize themselves, there's not really space for them to do so.
Yeah. Let's talk about what that regulatory framework would be. Part of the problem why regulators have been resistant in formalizing artisanal mining or informal small-scale mining has a lot to do with the fact that there are major safety concerns. The regulations place such a heavy burden on miners and mining companies to be compliant when it comes to safety and workplace hazards that oftentimes artisanal miners don't have the capacity to do that and may find themselves putting themselves in danger, putting communities in danger, or even putting fellow workers in danger, given that, as you said earlier, they use very rudimentary tools. Oftentimes there's mechanization, but not always the case. And that's the safety element is a big hurdle for them to pass. In what ways can regulators solve for that problem?
Once we get the formalization process in place and there's actually regulation, this will aid in the process of formalization. Because if you have an artisanal miner that has to check the boxes in order for them to mine, then there'll be a form of way where we can have checks and balances for there to be health and safety. The reason why they're not actually working in health conditions that are viable or safety conditions that are viable is because there's no room for them to do so, and there's no formalization in process for them to work within that space. So regulation really would make a big difference if there was regulation that said you have to fulfill A, B, C, and D for you to be a good and safe artisanal miner in a good and safe artisanal mining zone.
Yeah, but that's part of the question. How do you solve for that? What would those regulatory requirements be to ensure that artisanal miners are safe? Because the regulations around safety can be so cumbersome that it becomes exclusionary to artisanal miner, which then defeats the purpose, because then you may as well just go and apply, form a conglomerate or form a cooperative, apply for a license, and then become a mine in that sense, right? Where there are typically higher barriers to entry. How do we ensure that the regulations don't become an insurmountable barrier to entry?
That's a very good question, and I always tell people, especially when I do my research work, is that it has to be both a bottom-up and a top-down approach. Because when you go on the ground and at the grassroots level, you actually see there is a degree of safety that artisanal miners do take. For example, our cooperatives do have helmets, they do have safety gear like gum boots, they do have a certain degree of safety. But it's a matter of, number one, educating, number two, training, and number three, empowering them on the systems that they already have. Because trying to have an approach where we bring what we think is the solution to them won't work. We need to build the solution from bottom up and then meet them up from a top-down approach as well, and have somewhere where we meet in the middle.
Does the political will to formalize artisanal and informal small-scale mining exist in South Africa?
To be honest, that's a downright no. Because when we started the conversation with DMRE in 2022, we really thought there was progress. After the policy, then there was a halt. It's always more of a reactionary kind of approach. There's never really a proactive approach, because the National Association of Artisanal Miners is there. There are informal miners forming cooperatives trying to formalize themselves. So on the ground, we are trying to form a sort of regulatory guidelines and trying to bring it to the top guys. But we are just not getting any feedback from them.
Yeah, and in what way can you galvanize that kind of support? I mean, right now as I'm speaking to President Ramaphosa is addressing business leaders, talking about the mineral supply chain of South Africa at a meeting on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly in New York. Artisanal miners are not part of the conversation. In what way can that level of support and inclusion be galvanized?
I think, first of all, is that there must be more awareness brought to business leaders. There must be more awareness brought to the general public. There must be more awareness brought to the DMRE, to that artisanal miners are here and they are here to stay. Second of all, it's also actually talking to the artisanal miners themselves, because we have professional people who are willing to talk on these conversations on the sustainable form of mining artisanally, on making artisanal mining be an economic potential for the country. It's a matter of actually talking to the people on the ground. And here I am as an artisanal and mining expert and a special advisor to the National Association of Artisanal Miners. I've been speaking on this since 2013. It's 2024, but to this day, nobody has come and addressed the issue.
Yeah, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time and your insights this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. Kotatso Nhlengetwa is a special advisor to the National Association of Artisanal Miners. I'm taking your reaction to that. Give me a call, 086 000 2032. It's just about 20 minutes after 5 p.m.
The world's best football league makes its return to S3. Will Arsenal finally win their first title since 2004? Or will Man City continue their dominance of the league and win their 7th title under Pep Guardiola? Will the Dutchmen in Erik ten Hag and Arne Slot have something to say as Man United and Liverpool step in to contest for the title? But it's not only about winning the title. For some of the 20 teams, it's a chance to improve on their performances from last season. While for others, it's the battle to avoid relegation and stay in the top flight. Every team has a point to prove. This is not just football. This is a masterpiece being played out every weekend. Channel your best sport with the English Premier League. Saturdays at 3 p.m. on S3. Open up.
Put a spring in your step with the Espresso Morning Show.
That's right. Join us for fresh ideas, blooming trends, and vibrant tunes that are sure to brighten your day.
Discover the best ways to enjoy this season's beauty, from garden tips to spring fashion.
Come on now. Plus, get inspired with lively interviews and my favorite, the latest in entertainment.
Basically, start your mornings right with us. That's weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. only on S3.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
21 minutes after 5 p.m. This is the National Pulse. My name is Oliver Dickson. Thank you so much for being with me this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. It is just about 100 days now of the Government of National Unity, which is the national coalition government put together by 11 about political parties representing the will of the people, so to speak. About 80% of the electorate, 75% of the electorate, just about. Have they, in 100 days, set the right tone? Have they given us a clear indication of what governance will look like over the next 5 years? But more importantly, have they given you renewed hope in a recovery in South Africa's misgovernance that we've experienced for the better part of our democracy? Joining me to make sense of this is Professor Kotze Dirk Kotze, who is political analyst with the University of South Africa. Prof. Kotze, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. The first 100 days is usually where you get a sense of priorities, a sense of tone, a sense of strategy and approach. And these sort of things inform, to a very large extent, what governance will look like for the next couple of years. Do we have enough data points around key decision-making, cabinet meetings, cross-political party engagements and actions by certain ministers in key ministries that give us a sense of what governance for the next 5 years will approximately look like?
To be honest with you, good afternoon. I don't think we have yet a very complete picture of this. What we are seeing is that there's lots of activity within the government. They had already a cabinet Lekgotla. They work on the basis of the declaration, the statement of intent, which sets the basic principles of the government. We've seen quite a lot of activities by the different individual ministers. They've already appeared in Parliament to answer questions. But I think the very nature of the Government of National Unity as such an expanded coalition, because it's both a coalition and a Government of National Unity, is that the clarity about how it will function and specifically what will be their policies is going to develop over time. It's not something which we have clarity about now already in all respects. What we are starting to see is that they also develop mechanisms within the government. And lately there was the meeting between President Ramaphosa and all the leaders of the political parties about a week ago, in which they agreed also on mechanisms, for example, for dispute resolution within the cabinet, and the rules of how the ministers must conduct themselves, especially those of the opposition or parties that were in the past in opposition. So this is evolving. It is something which I think we can't really say we have already a complete picture about it. But the indications are to a large extent that they are able to find each other at this point in time. They are able to deal with policy differences amongst them. But I think it's a bit early to say already that this is the way in which they are going to function for the rest of the 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't really had a big test on dispute, right? The first and perhaps the only one so far is on the Bella bill. And the concession there by the president was to suspend the contentious parts of the bill, clause 4 and 5, for 3 months, pending further negotiation and engagement. Should that not be successful, that the DA would still challenge this legally in court. And it seems like that they wouldn't place their faith in the internal inter-party dispute resolutions in the government of national unity. The big test is yet to come. Do you think that they have a sense of the scale of the disputes that they might have to encounter over the next couple of years and how to truly commit to an internal process of dispute resolution?
Well, I think at this point in time, it's actually for anyone impossible to predict that what might become disputes in future, because we don't know what the issues will be. But I think what I've just explained now lays a foundation for how to approach it, and that exists already at local government level. In many of the metros, they are using that, and some of the other councils, smaller councils also. So it's in that sense, I think what is the mechanisms that they have, the procedural mechanisms, that is to a large extent is unfolding now, and I think for the moment it's functional and can be sufficient for this. What will be important, obviously, is how the parties are going to conduct themselves at more difficult times. For example, at the time of the local government election in 2 years' time, when they are going to campaign against each other, but at the same time will be partners in the coalition government also. When it comes to the time when they have to agree on the next budget, the national budget, I think that will be quite a test for them, because it's of different priorities that must come together from the different parties also. So I think in general one should say coalition governments are always complex wherever they are, in whatever country. And there will be hiccups. There's no question about that. But it doesn't mean that it will threaten the very existence of the coalition if there are differences of opinion. Yeah. And that we've seen, for example, now with the Bella Act. We've seen it also the way in which they approach the national health insurance, where the President Ramaphosa adopted more or less the same approach of saying we are not going to force it down your throat immediately, but it's something which one has to work on. So I think the South African public in general is very hopeful, very optimistic. The international community also, not only the business community, but the international diplomatic community also.
Yeah. Importantly, have you observed enough, and do we have enough data and information around the behavioral elements of members of the government of national unity that gives us a sense of whether we're entering a new culture of governance, and whether we can say that there is a shift in the culture of governance happening in South Africa?
I don't think we have yet, as the public, inside where they are working, for example, in the different clusters of the cabinet. It will be very interesting to know how they do that. We, from the outside, haven't yet had sort of an insight into that, but I think that will emerge quite soon. Also, the interaction between ministers and their DGs, the directors general of these departments, the interaction between the political side or the executive side and the officials of those departments is exceptionally important. So it's not only the cooperation between the different parties of the coalition that's important, but also within departments of how that cooperation can develop over time. So I think we will in the very near future start to hear more about the internal dynamics in cabinet, in the different cabinet committees, as well as the relationship in terms of personal relationship between the different ministers. Because another important point is that some ministers have deputy ministers who come from other parties. For example, the Minister of Finance, one of the deputy ministers come from the DA. And the same,
the same in Department of Trade, Industry and Competition as well.
For sure. So I think that type of relationship is also something that we have to have a close look at, how it's going to develop.
Yeah. Professor Kotza, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. Professor Dirk Kotza, political analyst with the University of South Africa there. Let's have a listen at some of your WhatsApp voice note reactions to President Ramaphosa's presentation earlier.
Listening to President Ramaphosa speaking in New York, who else do we have that can represent us as well as he does? He's a proper statesman, speaks so beautifully, uses such good English. Who else is there? There's no one else that can represent us on abroad except Mr. Ramaphosa. I challenge anyone to tell me who else we can get to represent us abroad. Internet. Thank you very much for a good show.
Hi Oliver, it's Joseph here from Randburg. I think it's very disingenuous for the president to blame the apartheid government for the education system whilst the ANC has been in government for the past 30 years. They should have turned things around. Honestly speaking, that's being disingenuous. After 30 years being in government, you still blame apartheid government. Really? No.
You know, Joseph, I once read that it takes 5 generations to turn around any country's education system. Maybe you're right. Maybe we want to speak about it. It's 5:30. Let's take your latest headlines.
Quick look at the headlines of this half hour. President Cyril Ramaphosa says American business communities must seize opportunities presented by the South African government and the market here. The KZN Transport MEC says there's room for improvement in how members of the public receive weather alerts following this weekend's snowstorm. And police in Tanzania have prevented a demonstration from taking place in Dar es Salaam after arresting several people, including 2 leading opposition figures. There's a full update at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. Old Johannesburg Road in Midrand has roadworks reported with traffic restrictions north of Olifantsfontein Road. The M24 in Centurion is closed between Swartkorps entrance and Alaric Road due to road collapse incident. In KZN, the M13 westbound in Kloof is slow moving towards Maytime Stores. Chris Hani Road northbound, that fatal truck crash reported at Victor Road has caused some serious delays. The R102 southbound is slow moving near Old North Coast Road, and Bayhead Road has truck congestion reported between South Coast Road and the Bluff, so expect delays. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound has a crash reported at the R300 interchange, and the M5 Prince George Drive has protest action in the Lavender Hill area, so expect delays and diversions. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Kapele.
In his sports this hour, starting off with rugby, Argentina forward Marcos Kramer has been ruled out of Saturday's title-deciding rugby championship clash against South Africa. With a knee injury, Kramer sustained the injury during the historic win over the Springboks on Saturday and has now been left out of the 28-man squad that will face South Africa in Nelspruit. South Africa just need a point from the last encounter to become champions and add another cup to their brimming trophy cabinet. In football, Marumo Gallant's coach Dan Malesela is targeting maximum points against defending champions Mamelodi Sundowns tomorrow. Malesela cut a frustrated figure following back-to-back defeats in the Betway Premiership, making his side one of only 2 teams yet to pick up points after 2 rounds of matches so far. Gallants now face Sundowns at Loftus on Heritage Day, and the coach insists that they can't be faced by the caliber of the opponents.
We don't have time, we don't have time. We just have to look at personnel, which is the right personnel to play against these guys. It's a very tough match as well.
Does it make it even harder given you've lost back-to-back games now?
Probably give them confidence. It will give them confidence, probably, but Yeah, we need to start winning somewhere, and it doesn't matter against who, eh? It really doesn't matter.
Then, with just over a week before the registration deadline, the organizers of the Soweto Marathon said that they're not concerned about the slow pace of entry sales. The deadline to secure race entries is midnight on the 30th of September. So far, only 10,000 entries have been sold, leaving around half of the targeted 20,000 still available. Race director Danny Bloomberg says that he anticipates a surge in last-minute registrations next week and is confident that they will reach the target. The highly anticipated race will take place on the 3rd of November in Nasrec.
Yeah, look, so the general trend, we're looking at all events, and I don't know if it's a South African trait that we have. We're all lastminute.com. So we're seeing, even now you can see, because we're closing towards the end of September, that a lot of people are entering. So to answer your question, yes, the entries are coming in. And we'll probably net off somewhere where we netted off towards the, last year, around about 22,000, somewhere around there. We're expecting, as I say, the daily entries are coming in quite quickly. So, yeah.
Moving on to tennis, Emma Raducanu has pulled out of this week's China Open in Beijing because of a foot injury. The 21-year-old had to retire from her Korea Open quarterfinal on Saturday because of the issue. Raducanu's name appeared in the Beijing draw when it was released today before she withdrew shortly afterwards. Then in Formula One, Grand Prix Drivers Association Chairman Alex Woz has confirmed that F1 drivers will meet internally to discuss Max Verstappen's FIA punishment for swearing. Verstappen received an obligation from the FIA to complete a day's public service for swearing during last Thursday's FIA press conference ahead of the Singapore Grand Prix. And Verstappen says that his punishment could lead him to reconsider his F1 future. Meanwhile, in cricket, Proteas coach Rob Walter says that the team are still on the right path. This is despite their ODI series loss to Afghanistan. South Africa restored their pride by winning the third ODI yesterday, but it was after they were outplayed in the first two matches. And according to Walter, he says that it can only get better if they continue to be exposed to tough conditions, and then hopefully it's a catalyst for them getting better and getting the depth stronger. With that said, it is a wrap from my side. I'll have more on other sports tomorrow.
Dumi, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. And of course, we'll get some of those sports updates tomorrow. Pirates is playing tomorrow. FC. I'm excited for that. In fact, that game is on while we're on air tomorrow. Excited for that. 36 minutes after 5.
Africa Chibembe. As trees and flowers blossom, the nation gets brighter and excited for sporting action. Tune in to SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC radio stations. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. SABC Sport celebrates the nation's diverse culture and heritage. Happy Heritage Month. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Mzansi, what has become of our country? Gender-based violence is eating our moral fabric, and we can no longer afford to turn a blind eye. This violence affects us all, occurring in various forms including femicide, which is the intentional killing of a woman because of her gender. It takes place anywhere, anytime, even in our own safe spaces at home. Working together with social partners through the National Strategic Plan on GBVF, the government aims to create a GBVF-free South Africa. As we acknowledge the gains from our 30 years of freedom and democracy, let us also work together to break the cycle of GBVF on our home ground. Call the 24-hour GBVF Command Center number on 0800 428 428 or text *120*7867#. A message from the GCIS.
There will be humongous fighting spirit accompanied by high emotions, tension, and drama.
because this is a meeting of giants. Golden Black targets maximum points as part of the Heritage Month celebrations. But Double Yellow says the Yellow Nation only gets impressed by victory. This is the Betway Premiership. Witness the massive clash between Kaizer Chiefs and Mamelodi Sundowns on Saturday, 28 September at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
It is 22 minutes to the top of the hour. My name is Oliver Dickson. You are tuned into the National Pulse. Jimmy Moya is next up with a throw forward into later on when he's broadcasting the MoneyWeb market update. Jimmy, what do you have for us?
Good evening, Oliver. Good evening to our listeners. It's going to be quite an interesting show today. We're going to pick up on the conversation you've been having around the 100 days of the Government of National Unity. We're going to reflect on the impact that's had on business and on sentiment from an investor standpoint. It looks as though international investors are starting to see South Africa in a different light, and hopefully we can continue the momentum that we have been building up. We're going to be looking at that conversation with Kaz Kovadia, who's the CEO of Business Unity South Africa, as well as getting some reflections from Professor Raymond Parsons of the Northwest University School of Business and Governance. We've also got a conversation with Tsepo Gadima, who's an independent analyst, around the South African National Petroleum Company. We got a new SOE quietly sort of last week. We're going to look at that. We're going to look at the energy picture, understanding that Eskom and Sasol recently entered into a memorandum of understanding for the production of gas, or for the supply of gas into South Africa. So we're going to look at the energy conversation around South Africa. What does that mean? What does the new SOE look like? And try and understand how it all fits in together. Then we've got a conversation with 91 around the longer term implications of the two-pot system. That system's come into effect obviously this month, and we're going to be looking at not just the short-term aspects around your withdrawals, but what it looks like if you withdraw money consistently for a number of years after this initial withdrawal phase. And then because it's Monday, we've got a personal finance segment on a Monday. We're going to be taking a look at wills, understanding how to put a will in place, why you should put a will in place, and what to do if you need to deal with a will within the family. Before we get to that, the markets have been quite interesting for the start of the week. It's been a bit of a mixed bag in terms of Asian markets, with the Nikkei and Shanghai markets being the two positive markets in Asia session, while the Sydney ASX and the Hong Kong markets both finishing in the red. European markets were also a bit of a mixed bag. The CAC 40 was marginally in the red, kind of flat though, with the FTSE and the DAX in Germany both finishing in the green. US markets are in the green at the moment. The Nasdaq up 0.5%, the S&P up 0.5%, but South African markets are where all the attention is. Resources closing the day out 2% in the green. Top 40 closing the day out 1.2 in the green. The all share 1.13% in the green. Industrials 0.5%, and financial stocks 1.5%. I'm certainly happy with the start of the week that the SA markets have shown here. If we look at the Rand's performance, that's also on a very good ground. 17 Rand 29 cents against the US dollar. Hasn't been in this territory at all this year. We're at about 23 Rand and 10 cents against a British pound. 1 euro will cost you 19 Rand and 26 cents. 1 Australian dollar 11 Rand 85. The price of Bitcoin is also moving up. That is currently at 63,400 US dollars per coin. If we have a quick squiz at the commodities prices, gold price, new record highs, 2,630 is where it's currently sitting, having had a really good day as well. It's up about 0.4%. The Brent crude price, $74.29 a barrel, kind of sitting in a weird space, but not back at $80 a barrel, so we'll take that as a win. Platinum pricing is $965 an ounce, weaker than it was this time last week. Palladium pricing still above $1,000 at $1,049 an ounce. We're going to look into these and other movements a little later on. There's been a lot that's been moving our local markets, especially on the equity side, and we're going to reflect on some of those good news that we got from equities. But for now, Oliver, back to you and the team.
Will the National Petroleum Company of South Africa be a subsidiary of Petro SA? Will it be independent to Petro SA? Will Petro SA be absorbed into it? Do we have a sense of what that will be?
Yeah, so effectively what we're looking at is a merger of the Central Energy Fund, the Strategic Fuel Fund and PetroSA into a new entity called the South African National Petroleum Company. I believe that petroleum company will still then report into the relevant ministries. I suppose it would be the Ministry of Energy at this point. But we'll look into this and see what the implications are, because if you remember, a couple of weeks ago there was also that conversation around the refinery assets being sold by BP and Total into the Central Energy Fund for R1 or €1, an arbitrary number, so to speak, because we actually don't have refineries left. So we're going to look at that component, look at how it all fits in, look at what it means for the energy mix, because there's now a new conversation wanting to bring back refineries into South Africa. So lots to dig into there.
I mean, I would imagine it would be a little bit difficult because the Central Energy Fund, for a weird reason, you wouldn't tell from its name, has some regulatory powers in price determination and those sort of things. It's going to be interesting to see how they make this merger or dissolving of these companies into one state entity, make that happen, given the governance woes at PetroSA.
Yeah, lots to look into and lots to unpack, especially when we are in this new government of national unity. Which policies take priority and how do you move it forward?
Yeah. Jimmy, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. Jimmy will be up at 6 p.m. Do stay tuned for that. It's just about 15 minutes before the top of the hour.
Four dynamic design duos reimagine and reinvent 4 apartments in a century-old building nestled in the vibrant suburb of Sea Point, Cape Town. Armed with creativity, determination, and a limited budget, the duos fight against the clock to transform this grand old dame into a contemporary masterpiece, all under the critical eyes of an expert judging panel. The winning duo will claim a grand prize of 300,000 Rand, with an additional 100,000 Rand going to the fan favorite team, as voted by viewers. Channel your inner wow with My Design Rules, Sundays at 7 p.m, only on S3. Open up.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
15 minutes before the top of the hour, give us a call, 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial. Let's have a listen at some of your reactions.
Hi, with respect to the government needing to have done more with regards to disaster management, preemptively, I really do believe that having issued out warnings and told the public not to travel, they did their part. I think we need to be more active citizens and be willing to accept when our government or when the weather services issues a warning, tells us what's going to happen, and respects that they have some form of authority, rather than ignoring them and choosing to go about our merry way, get stuck in the middle of nowhere, and then ask what are they doing.
Good afternoon, Oliver. The ANC, they talk peace in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine, but they don't condemn Hamas. They talk peace in Ukraine, but they don't condemn Putin, the aggressor. You know, the ANC must rephrase its foreign policy for what it really is. They say they stand for social justice. No, that's not it. This is selective social justice for the purposes of publicity. Thanks, Lionel Whitbank.
Well, the ANC has at many points condemned certain actions of Hamas, but do they view Hamas as a terrorist organization in the same way that the West does? Perhaps not, right? And there's a legitimate debate to be had about that. In particular, I've heard certain ANC members and senior leaders of the party draw parallels between Hamas and Umkhonto weSizwe during the struggle, saying that a resistance movement is often labeled and bastardized as a terrorist organization when it uses force to bring about the freedom of its people. And so Hamas, they say, they see in many ways as a liberation movement in the same way Umkhonto weSizwe was seen as a liberation movement. Part of it are not always smooth around the edges, and part of it are not always comfortable to talk about, but they've made those parallels. What do you think about it, Lionel in Witbank? Send me another voice note, 0614-104-107. I'm also taking some of your reactions to some of the earlier conversations we've had.
Hey, Oliver. I would like to remain anonymous. You know, in one of the schools in Carltonville on the west end of Gauteng, there's a school governing body chairperson there. She's doing business with the school, like the tuck shop. She's the one who runs the tuck shop at the school. She's the one who's responsible for school feeding scheme. It's a small school feeding scheme, but she's the one who does that. She's even running afternoon classes, extra classes on the school premises. They gave her one of the classrooms. She's doing that, and she's charging parents for that. I really don't understand, Oliver, because Schools Act is very clear that no member of the school governing body should be doing business with the school. But this has been going on for a long time. Can you please, Oliver, investigate that? But I won't reveal my name because I will be victimized. But it's a serious concern for myself and other people, because this cannot go on like this. I mean, she's benefiting, whereas she's a member of the governing body, and we know what the Schools Act is saying about that.
Please do email us whatever details you have on that and the name of the school and the name of the official in question. Email us at info@safm.co.za. You're absolutely right. There is a clear governance issue there and a conflict of interest, and that shouldn't be allowed to happen if this person is indeed a member of the school governing body or has relationships with any of the members of the school governing body at that particular school. It's info@safm.co.za. That's where you can send us that email, and I'll ask the team to look into it. Please do just make it out for the attention of the National Pulse team, and we'll make sure that we take a look into that. It's 10 minutes to before the top of the hour.
Cervical cancer is the leading cause of cancer-related deaths among South African women. This is heartbreaking because cervical cancer is highly preventable through HPV vaccination and regular pap smears. Pap smears are a bit uncomfortable but painless, doesn't take too long, and detect abnormal cells before they become cancerous. Women aged 21 and older should book a pap smear at a Cancer Association of South Africa care center. Call 0800 22 6622 for info. This is an SABC supported initiative.
And we went on a water safari, and Mom spotted a hippo, and it said, "Grrr."
There is a place where you can see wonder and the wild, with breathtaking scenery and endless landscapes. Enjoy good food and embrace great taste.
And the next day we went to the Reed dance. I saw the maidens handing over reeds to the mighty Zulu king, and the Zulu warriors chanting, "Baye!"
Explore all this and more in the magical Zulu Kingdom. This message is brought to you by KZN Tourism and Film Authority.
Weeknights on S3 are anything but ordinary. BBC Primetime brings you the best of British television from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Open your mind to Life on Death Row, Thursdays at 9 p.m. and Resistance in a Hostile Environment, a 3-part documentary showcasing turning points which would go on to define race relations in the UK for a generation. Thursdays at 10 p.m. Wind down your weeknights with The Outlaws, Fridays at 9 p.m. and explore the world's most dangerous roads at 10 p.m. Channel your best entertainment with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
S3.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
With the crime statistics being what it is and disproportionately affecting young people, and the amount of criminals disproportionately being young people, correlating with unemployment stats in South Africa, where unemployment very specifically disproportionately affects young people, educational outcomes, again, disproportionately affecting young people, one has to ask the question, are the young people of South Africa left destitute? Are the young people of South Africa left hopeless? Jigizinto, a movement of sorts, collaborating with South African youth and the Girl Effect, which is an international non-profit organization, now exist, and they say they want to turn this around. Very specifically, they say they want to empower young people to be able to make informed decisions, and they want to reach young people where they are. Well, let's speak to the good people at Jigizinto. Lebu Leach, which is the Jigizinto creative lead at Girl Effect, joins us. Lebu, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Tell us about Jigizinto.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Dickson is a youth brand that we're launching and that we've co-created with young people in South Africa to try and address many of the things that you have mentioned. You know, we went around the country speaking to young people, and the overwhelming feeling was a sense of hopelessness. It was a sense that there's nothing really out there that speaks to them or that is for them, in spite of the fact that there's so many initiatives kind of out there that are supposedly geared to young people. They were feeling really disconnected to all of these opportunities. So we wanted to create a brand that would be a connector, that would be maybe a translator, you know, meet young people where they are, as opposed to pulling them from where they are and dragging them or encouraging them to come to the buildings that we have created.
Yeah. What is the tool of empowerment that we speak about here when we say we want young people to be able to make informed choices and decisions? If we look at unemployment, for instance, right? Many may say that the real empowerment young people need are job opportunities. No matter how many workshops you have on how to apply for a job, how to become employable, if there isn't an increase in job opportunities, those exercises may well be futile. So what is the tool of empowerment that Jigizinto has identified?
Well, we found that it's not even so much about the job opportunities. And I agree, there is a shortage of the match between a skilled young person and an opportunity where they can fill that role. If you don't have the right mindset, if you don't feel like you can do it or this thing is for you, no matter how much training I give you, even in the interview, you're not going to make it through. So the thematic areas or our core areas as a brand that we're focusing on is mental well-being, as a way to kind of strengthen the resilience in young people in order to be able to take up economic empowerment opportunities. So we are partnering with the NYDA, we're partnering with all kinds of organizations to connect young people to jobs, yes, but we want the person to be whole, we want the person to feel confident, we want the person to feel seen so that when they meet that moment, they're ready for it.
Yeah.
But you were asking about what the practical tools are. So we know that young people are in the media space, so they will watch content, they're on social media, they listen to music. So we start off by building a conversation and a rapport with young people in these spaces. So we've got a TV series coming out that is going to model the journey of a hustler or somebody trying to find their dream or find their vision in life. We have a web app, and we built a web app as opposed to just a website or an application, so that no matter what phone you have, is it an entry-level smartphone, you can get onto this website or this web app and go through our service finder and find the service that you need for that moment.
Yeah, and it seems like a digital platform and a digital forum as a place of where you engage and build the community. On the ground, in other ways, how are you engaging and attracting young people? And if there's a young person listening right now saying, I perhaps want to get in touch, perhaps there is value for me to get here, how do they do so?
Well, I always like to say that we are here for a long time, not just a good time. So if you can start by following us on all our social media pages, Dickson_ZA. And on those social media platforms, that's where we're going to start releasing, hey, we're coming to Durban, come and meet us here. In Cape Town, we're doing an activation with such and such an organization, come and meet us here. Because we found that sending out newsletters to young people doesn't really work well. They really prefer to be in a WhatsApp conversation with you. They really prefer to be on a live, on Instagram, on Facebook with you. And that's where we really want to stay and be in conversation with young people. So they can come and find us on jiki.co.za, open a profile, or just on social media.
And very importantly, you spoke about some of those programs that you have going there, such as engaging young people through song, through multimedia platforms. Talk to us about some of the other programmatic things, like the work you're doing with the NYDA. What specifically happens in that partnership?
So we are in the process of finalizing strategic partnerships, not just with the NYDA, the Desmond Tutu Foundation, as well as Riza Babwile, which are community clinics, to help amplify their services and help connect young people in a way that feels accessible to them. In the conversations that we were having with Harambe and NYDA, they're like, we've got all of these things. Young people don't come. And we're like, we know how to bring young people. Leave it to us. We will bring them to you and then hand them over, because we didn't want to come into the market and reinvent the wheel. We didn't want to come in and build another 700 clinics. We have enough clinics. What we don't have is footfall of young people coming through. We have one of the largest condom distribution programs in the world, and yet our HIV and AIDS statistics are still going up. So it really is a function of communication. And our strength is in speaking to young people in a way that they can resonate with, in a way that allows them to feel seen, and in a way that they can feel like, okay, this is something that I can trust, and this is something that I can follow.
Yep. Lebulich, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your work, and all the best. Keep winning and keep getting young South Africans particularly, empowered. Lebulich is with the Jigizinto Movement Creative Lead at Girl Effect. That brings us to the end of the show. Again, thank you so much to you for your engagements, for your calls, for your WhatsApp voice notes, your tweets. There's a lot that we covered on the show. There's a lot of messages that we couldn't get back to, couldn't get through to. We really do appreciate it. I'm with you again tomorrow at exactly 3 p.m. So please do tune in as we get in touch with the National Pulse once again. But you can join me this evening once again on my show, which is Night Talk at 10 p.m. sharp. My name is Oliver Dickson. From myself and the team, it's good night for now. It's good afternoon for now. Good evening, rather. Cheers.
With misinformation and disinformation around us all the time, where can we turn to for news and information that is not fake? Radio, of course, your number one trusted source of reliable and truthful news and information. For over 3 decades, we have been a signatory to the BCCSA Broadcasting Code of Conduct, and we pride ourselves as a trusted source of information. Say no to false news and disinformation that circulates online. Radio, keeping it real and fighting fake since day one. A message from the National Association of Broadcasters.
South Africa open for business and transport. MEC calls for improvement in weather warnings. Good evening. President Cyril Ramaphosa says the U.S. business community must seize opportunities presented by the South African market. He's engaged with captains of industry in New York on the margins of the UN General Assembly. The president is focusing on the role of business in navigating a landscape for Africa's minerals. He says South Africa is open for business.
What I would call our new rich experience with automotive production, to get some of the world's leading automotive manufacturers with a footprint in South Africa to produce more of their green vehicles in our own country. As you may well know, we've got a number of original equipment manufacturers who manufacture cars located in South Africa, and we're seeing a great deal of interest and attraction to our market.
Meanwhile, ahead of Heritage Day tomorrow, President Ramaphosa has called on business and other stakeholders to